Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the regular HARC meeting of Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. The hybrid meeting at Rebecca Hall. Just as a reminder, if you're joining online, virtually, meeting ID number is 858-9638-0068. Passcode is 257117. And just to remind everybody, before we start, the purpose of HARC is to preserve, maintain, and enhance the historic character, scale, architectural integrity, and cultural resources of the town and the Telluride Historic Landmark. Before we call to order officially do the roll call, we have to acknowledge the site walk today. And we had a site walk occurred at 3 p.m. on today, May 15th at 1200 Black Bear Road. During the sidewalk, we only had discussions that related to the orientation of the site, the physical characteristics of the site, and the layout of the site. Present were Mark Shambaugh, Matt Lee, Stacy Lake, Bob Mather, Andrew Williamson, Jonna Wenzel, James Van Hoosier, Jim Kehoe, and Lance McDonald.
I'm sorry, Chairperson Shambaugh, Bob Wilson was also.
And Bob Wilson, yes, thank you. And then we had a second site walk after that at the Canaan Lands Northwest site. We only had discussions relating to the front setback. Present at the site were Mark Shambaugh, Matt Lee, Stacy Lake, Bob Mather, Andrew Williamson, Jonna Wenzel, James Van Hoosier, Jim Kehoe, and neighbor Sandy Gurley. So we'll do the roll call. First of all, from Town Council, we have. Oh, thank you for coming. Staff, we have Jonna, Erica, Allie, Piper, Darren, Erica, and John.
And I believe Ron is available.
Oh, and Ron's with us too. Okay, thank you. Welcome virtually. And from the board, we'll do our roll call. Stacy
Lake, Matt Lee,
Mark Shambaugh,
Bob Mather,
Andrew Williamson.
very good. And do we have a motion to approve the HARC minutes of our April 17th meeting?
I move to approve the HARC meeting minutes dated April 17th, 2024 as written.
Matt will second.
Stacy,
yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
And Stacy, would you like to move to approve the chair meeting? 19th.
I would like to make a motion to approve the chair meeting from April 19th, although Piper, I do have one change. It states that I adjourned the meeting at 9:57 p.m.
That's a long one.
That was a long chair meeting. That should be revised to AM. Thank you.
I knew you were more efficient than that. Okay. Staff announcements, Jonna.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm very pleased to introduce our new historic preservation planner, Darren Candelaria. Darren has just graduated from graduate school. She received her Master's of Historic Preservation from Clemson University in Charleston. And she is today packing up her U-Haul and setting off for Telluride. So tomorrow, I believe she's leaving. So she will be here in person May 28th, the day after Memorial Day. And we'll be here for your next HARC meeting and we'll be available to you. And I encourage you all to reach out, introduce yourselves, invite her for a walk or a coffee, just get to know her. We're really lucky to have her join us here.
Welcome, Darren.
Welcome.
Hi.
Safe travels.
Thank you. It's going to be a long trip, but I'm very excited.
Can't wait to see you in person. And, you know, you and Erica could almost be sisters as I'm looking at you on the big screen.
Yeah.
Pull your hair back a little bit and, you know, it could be.
Yeah.
And also a special thanks for Erica, and she's gotten, I think, a promotion to get more involved even with her role here in HARC. So congratulations and
Yeah,
thank
just
you.
to emphasize that Erica's been promoted to interim senior historic preservation planner and will be taking over much of what I've been doing and is, I have no doubt, up to the task and available. She's full-time and available whenever you might need her, within reason.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then finally, I'd like to mention that Interim Planning Director, John, has scheduled a board training session for the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 26th from 10 to 2 that Ally and John are going to lead, and they would like to invite HARC members to attend if you're available. This could count towards your required training for this year. So I would encourage you to sit in. Do you want to say anything about the nature of the training?
We're going to be doing training. No, we're going to be just going over our procedures and anything that's changed in the last couple of years. Planning and zoning will be a little bit different, difference between quasi judicial and other things. So it'll be probably stuff you've heard before, but always good to hear again.
Okay.
So it's joint with P and Z.
June 26th, 10 to 2, and I assume lunch will be served.
Absolutely.
So a free lunch, be there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, John.
And then I have, whenever you're ready, I have the public process slide ready to put up.
Okay, well, just very briefly, we had a little recognition pre-dinner with staff and board. Jonna and I just would like to read into the record the plaque that she received from the HARC Commission in recognition, Jonna Wenzel, in recognition of your 8 years of outstanding service as Telluride Historic Preservation Director and your unsurpassed knowledge, professionalism, and dedication. Telluride's enduring historic character will stand as a testament to your indelible legacy. Signed the HARC Commission. So, again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. It means so much to me, and I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed working with each and every one. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead with the prescriptive announcement of the process rules. So for anybody listening or joining us tonight, the process is as follows: 7 steps. The HARC chair introduces the project, staff gives the presentation and answers the board's questions. The applicant then gives their presentation and answers HARC questions, which we request to be 30 minutes or less if possible. Public is invited then to make comments on the specific project. We ask for those comments to be 3 minutes or less. And if there's 8 people saying the same thing, if you just want to concur with the previous speaker, unless you have something new to say, then please say that. Dialogue between the public, applicants, and HARC members is not permitted. The applicant may address any comments made by the public. Public comment ends, and then the HARC members deliberate and then vote on the application. So with that, is there any public comment on non-agenda items tonight? And I don't see any non-agenda items comments. All of a sudden, we got a lot of people joining us. Non-agenda gone. Okay. And we will start the business of our 5 review and recommendation procedures. And I'll introduce each one at a time. First one is the landscape code amendment. It's a review and recommendation from HARC to the P&Z Commission regarding amendments to Land Use Code Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 5, landscaping, outdoor illumination, and maintenance, removal, or relocation of trees standards for the purpose of adding citations for the Water Conservation Code. Ron Quarles is Ron going to give this one?
Yes.
Thank you, Ron, and welcome. Good to
Hi.
see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Good evening, Chair and HARC members. This is an application for a review and recommendation from you as the HARC members to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is an application to amend the land use code, specifically section 3-502, the landscape requirements. The amendment will be considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their next meeting. That's scheduled for next Thursday evening. The amendment will then go to Town Council for 2 separate readings prior to adoption. The change to the land use code follows up action taken by the Town Council. You may remember presentations that were given to you by Karen Guglielmoni a while back in 2021, I believe. Some of the changes to the water efficiency plan and the climate action plan that was approved in 2022. With those changes, new standards were added in 2023 to the Water Conservation Code, specifically to require new higher standards with any new or remodel landscape projects. Applicants now must submit an irrigation plan with a water budget evaluation prepared by an irrigation specialist. And once the landscaping is in place or is installed and the irrigation is in place, they must provide a water audit to ensure compliance. So the amendment you are considering tonight doesn't really make any new changes. It doesn't add anything. It just simply incorporates that language that was already approved in the Water Conservation Code, mainly to make sure that we don't miss it when applications are being submitted. We make sure that the applicants are aware that they have to provide a water budget and irrigation plan with their landscape plan before it goes forward. One other change that we've made to the land use code is to correct language. Currently, the code exempts detached one-family residences from the landscape plan requirements. In practice, we've always required landscape plans with single family. So we're simply correcting the language to take out that exemption. And other than that, that's really all that this does. Again, there's no additional language, there's no changes. It's simply to make sure that we are following the Water Conservation Code when landscape plan applications are submitted. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ron. Very timely. Any questions for Ron? Any public comment? Piper, I don't see anybody. Raise your hand electronically if you want to comment on landscaping use code amendment, and seeing none. We'll go to deliberations. Comments?
Seems like a housekeeping exercise to enshrine what's been the practice.
You want to make the motion?
Sure. I move to recommend to P and Z approval of the amendment to Land Use Code Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 5, Landscaping, Outdoor Illumination, and Maintenance, Removal or Relocation of Tree Standards within the LUC amendment language attached to the staff memorandum dated May 7th, 2024, and with the findings of the staff memorandum dated May 7th, 2024. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at the hearing held on May 15th, 2024, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
I'll second that.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes. Thank you, Ron, and it's good seeing you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We'll go on to the second one, which is the Wetland Procedure Code Amendment. It's a review and recommendation from HARC to P and Z regarding amendments to Land Use Code Article 3 Zone District Regulations, Division 8 Wetland Regulations for the purpose of changing the order of development application submittal. And John Strandberg will give us the overview.
Thank you. The timing for the next three review and recommendations will be the same from what Ron was just talking about, going to Planning and Zoning Commission and then on to council from that, with the same dates as well. But this one, this is the staff initiated item, changing the order of procedures for projects requiring wetland review to go to planning and zoning first before going to HARC for CAs or such. So currently the wetland regulations require a certificate of appropriateness to be obtained prior to going to planning. And that has created several, actually not several, but many different conflicts with stuff. You guys approve, a building, it looks great, it's in a certain spot, and then it goes over to us, gets a vested right, goes over to planning, and we're like, okay, it's way in the setback. How do we go about getting and working with something that has been approved for that by another board. So it's been a challenge and it's been created some problems working around that. Obviously, Ron has been doing that in the past and doing a great job. He might have disappeared already, but he's done a great job with it. But this would just help clear things up and allow us to move forward at a lot easier and more efficient rate. So I'm open to any questions or comments.
Questions? The public, anybody want to comment on this land use code revision in the public? Please electronically raise your hand since there's none in the audience. This is a much needed process improvement. Thank you for this. No public comment. Any deliberation? Same.
Do it.
Bob.
I move to recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the proposed amendment to the Telluride Land Use Code, Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 8, Wetlands Regulations, Section 820, disturbance of wetland areas and establishment of a wetland setback, D, development review procedures.
Matt will second.
Okay, Stacy,
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you again, John. Next. We have the application timing code amendment. It's a review and recommendation from HARC to P and Z again regarding the amendments to Land Use Code, Article 5, Development Review Procedures, Division 2, the land development process for the purpose of application timing. John Strandberg will again give that overview.
Yeah, this is also another staff initiated item. This is adding timing to projects to be deemed complete and compliant 30 days prior to a scheduled meeting. That could be either before planning and zoning or HARC, and 15 days prior for a continuation meeting date. And this is a new section that has been added to 5202E. And the application timing would help with providing staff time to do their jobs effectively. What we've come across is people will come in right at the end, or an applicant will come in right at like the last 2 days before noticing time comes out. And we need this, and another one will come in, we need that. And staff does their best to process these through in a timely manner. And this will just allow to put some parameters around it and kind of put, okay, this is when it has to be done. This is when it, otherwise it has to be done or it moves on. There is a provision still in the code that would allow for the director to change that and allow one to go forward if they deem appropriate. So that's still in there. If something comes up and you're like, okay, we've been waiting on this one little last piece and it finally came in and we can move that forward. But there's still that small little caveat in there for that, just in case something pops up.
Thank you. Questions for John? Anybody in the public would like to make a comment about this land use code training? Timing, should say, amendment. Seeing no one with their hands up. Deliberate.
I'd like,
No deliberation required.
I do appreciate you clarifying that that there's the ability to advance it.
Back
So if a
up.
project drops out or if they're waiting on a small piece. That was my only concern about this. So I'm good to go.
Well done. Yeah.
I'd like to propose a motion. I move to recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the proposed amendment to the Telluride Land Use Code, Article 5, Development Review Procedures, Division 2, the Land Development Process, Section 202, Submission of the Development Application.
I'll second that.
Stacy.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
Very efficient tonight. Thanks, John. Sign, I can get that song on my mind. Okay, a signed code amendment. This is the review and recommendation from HARC to P and Z again regarding amendments to Land Use Code Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 4, signed regulations for the repeal and replacement of this section. John Strandberg.
So this one should go really fast. So, well, the Telluride sign regulations have not been updated in the last 13 years, since 2011. And since then, there's been several large Supreme Court decisions that have come down, and they're in your packet, but I'm going to briefly summarize them real fast. The first is Reed versus the town of Gilbert, and this stated that sign ordinances must either be content neutral or maybe content based if tailored to further a government interest, basically a government sign. So to determine if the sign is content neutral, it has to be looked at in red. So if you're looking at something and going, hey, that says, First Baptist Church on it, that's a church sign. So you can't say church signs can only be here, or they can only have this parameter amount. It can only be this, only a monument sign or whatever. You can't do that. It can be, there's a sign there. We can look at it and go, what time is it out there? That's fine. A place and manner, and that's it. So if you have to read it, the bottom line is if you have to read it, it's not content neutral. And we can't defend that as a municipality. So looking through this, it became apparent that things needed to change and we needed to update it. This came into effect in 2015. So it's been a few years for that. The other one was, this was kind of a win for municipalities. It was the city of Austin versus Reagan National Advertising of Austin. And this basically affirmed that off-premise signs can be regulated, even if they say something. You even have to look at it to know it's an off-premise sign. So these two pieces kind of came in and went, okay, we should look at this thing and redo it. So in that process, the draft sign code was created to keep the existing signs and got design guidelines intact. So Eric and I went through quite a number of hours of reading through our sign code and comparing it with what we have, and how does that affect this, and how does that affect that, and if we change this little piece here, is that going to make this one non-conforming, meaning it was legally established but now it's not? No, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for people not only to move forward with what they have currently, or if they're even looking at doing a sign code at this moment or doing something for it. So that was kind of a big deal for us when we were looking through it. We took a whole bunch of different ideas from it. We started off, and the base of it ran off the Breckenridge Code. So we took that as a big baseline and started working with that piece, and then used not only these, but many pieces came from this. The Snowmass, the Steamboat, the Loveland, Alamosa, Park City, Utah, Brentwood, California, San Luis Obispo. So many of them that had pretty progressive sign codes, and were able to bring them in. Could be just a little snippet here, and there were others too. So it was a collaborative piece of Eric and I looking at it going, hey, how can we make all these things work together and come up with something that works for the town of Telluride? Because Telluride's unique. And the big problem we had with that was, a lot of the new codes that come out, they're like, oh, this zone allows you to do this type of sign. There's almost a commercial element in every zone in Telluride. So it was like, how do we make that work with what we have? So I think we've come up with something that's going to work well. However, that all being said, since the packet was released, I'm constantly looking at this and reviewing it. And I got to with Allie a little bit of it, and she's probably going to go through more of it. I do have some updates on this since that came through. So if you go to page 12 first, I numbered these for this exact reason. I've done sign codes before. It's like, okay, we're going to need numbers on this thing. So if you look at page 12, one of the first things that came up was 3404F, which is under section 3044 exempt signs. So these are not governed and allowed, just allowed. So 3044F is warning signs, meaning marking hazards on private property. These are things like beware of dog. And it was determined that because it's a public benefit sign, this is permitted and it's defendable through municipality. So that was something that we talked about. And I think we're in a good place for that. Many of the other codes have very similar things that have been vetted through and approved from other ones. So it was like, good that everybody else had it as well. So we're not going to be left out, because we thought that would be kind of important to have. The other one is if you drop down to 3404L, so this is the holder of a special event permit. This was also another interesting one. Again, I said Telluride's unique. We have all these big festivals. How do you work with these festivals with these other different parameters and then have these other ones, meaning for commercial business? Because we have banners that go across Main Street and Colorado Ave, and they do stuff all over. So it was determined that we could do it through a permit issued by Telluride Parks and Rec. So if they issue a permit, we're now looking at what the sign is to see what it is. It's from their stuff. And the change we have is the second line after it says Town of Telluride Parks and Recreation Department may affix temporary signs. And then it says related to the event. That's just struck through. So it'll say may affix temporary signs per the approved permit. This just adds a little bit more clarity to it. Then I have one other piece here. If we go to page 16. This is under temporary banner signs. It's 3410A. It's banners on schools and public property, school district and public property. And it's banners on school district and public property shall be reviewed by the town and Telluride town manager. And I'm just adding or designee, so we don't overload the town manager with something. They can say, okay, we want this person or group to oversee these as well. So
Is there some trigger on the minimum, like if this is homecoming, putting up the homecoming banner, they gotta get approval
yes,
on their ground?
if they're putting a banner up, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
Question?
and then that's the last one I have. So sign codes can always be crazy and dynamic elements. So I'm open to thoughts or suggestions or anything.
I have a question.
Yeah.
We have the sign guidelines in the design guidelines. Are
Mhm.
we eliminating that? We had discussed that in our review process.
Yes, that's a good
correct.
question. So when Erica and I were working through that, that's one of the things we talked about was bringing everything together into one spot. So that makes it easier for not only staff, but applicants to go, okay, it's all in this one area. We're taking it out of the design guidelines and it's in this section here. Erica went through that with a fine tooth comb. So if nobody likes it, I'll blame Erica.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Is the size or linear footage or the lumens more stringent than what it was previously?
No,
Same.
it's the exact same.
Okay, and what about compared to these other cities that were more progressive ahead of us? Are we less square footage, linear footage and lumens? I hope maybe less lumens.
Our lumens are, I believe, are a little less than some of the others. I think some of them went up to 500. I think ours goes up to 450. Well, meaning 500 and above for other ones. Because some of these places are big communities. I mean, San Luis
Yeah.
Obispo, that's huge, but they have a very, very, very good sign code. So they had different stuff though. We don't have big commercial areas, obviously. We don't have industrial areas. We have Colorado Ave where you've got these, signs that come out, these projecting signs and so forth that can be a certain size. So they're not changing at all. And that was one of the things that we worked on. Eric and I went through that pretty heavily as to how to make it so everything is going to be, somebody wants to come in now, they're going to get the same thing they got before. But this code will be compliant with the Supreme Court.
Well, saw the shielding in it anyway, regardless. So, any other questions?
I have one question. Are the signs that planning department puts up for review, are those temporary, considered temporary signs?
Those are exempt government signs
Exempt,
because we're
okay.
government and we can do it. No.
Way to go.
Oh, no,
Under,
I figured they were all right. I just was wondering.
Under the exempt section, they are part of that.
Thanks for all your work on it. Any public comment on signs? Sing it. Okay. Deliberations or a motion?
I'll do the motion. I move to recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the proposed repeal, replacement of the Telluride Land Use Code, Article 3, Zone District Regulations, Division 4, Sign Regulations.
Matt will second.
Stacy?
JCS.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
Thanks, John, for you and Erica's work on this. Great.
To be clear, Darren did help some with this.
Oh,
So she had a little
Your
input on
feet
that.
wet. Okay. So now we know who to go to for questions, Darren. What signs? Okay. Under the design guidelines, code amendment is the final land use code amendment for this evening. It's a review and recommendation from HARC to P and Z regarding amendments to the Telluride Land Use Code of the Telluride Municipal Code at Chapter 18 Land Use Code, Article 7 Historic and Architectural Review, Division 1 Historic Preservation Overlay District for the purpose of amending the design guidelines and standards for building in Telluride, January 2016 edition per Land Use Code, Section 7105A. Staff member John Wenzel.
Okay, thank you. It looks like 3 minutes is the time to beat tonight, so.
Go for it.
For land use code amendments. So as you all are aware, HARC identified updating the design guidelines at a retreat last year. We started the process in September with a green light from town council, who included updating the guidelines in their 2024 goals and objectives. So the guidelines, as you all know, are the community standards and best practices for preservation and new construction in the town. The guidelines were last updated in 2015 and then reformatted in 2016. So it was time. Also, as we all use the guidelines and get more and more familiar with them, we realized that there were inconsistencies and outdated language. And so we cleaned those types of things up, as well as providing some new definitions and introducing some allowance for some new materials. So the guidelines committee was comprised of 3 HARC members and historic preservation staff. We started in September 2023 and finished in February 2024. HARC has seen the revisions as we've been working on them, so I know these are all quite familiar to you. And so I have the full document available and ready to pull up if you want to. I'm guessing you have a few edits for me or suggestions, and happy to talk through those. The red line draft was posted on the town's website on May 3rd, and the public invited to provide comment on the guidelines. I have not received any comments from the public yet. The draft will go to the Planning and Zoning Commission next week for review and recommendation to town council. And we're expecting council to review the draft at the June meetings, 2 June meetings, the first and second readings. So barring any major changes, that's the timeline, and we hope to have them revised and adopted fairly soon. Once they're adopted, staff is prepared to work with our code publishing company to get them uploaded onto the website and to have new books printed for your use. So.
Very good.
Do you have any questions, or do you want to look at anything specific in the document which I could pull up?
I kind of have a question. One of the things we looked at, and it's part of the committee, was that some of the photographs and graphics were outdated. Is someone taking care of, you've already done that?
I have updated the photos that we identified
Okay.
in the draft, in the
Okay.
red line draft.
I mean, I checked every photo, every paragraph of this 250-page book,
Wow.
and I only found one thing, which I already told John about.
Let us have it.
But it's the one we put in every section.
That I
and-
missed,
and
yeah.
Just under, it's usually under mass and scale, but under building form, it was
And this is accommodations treatment area?
Oh, yeah, accommodations, yeah, sorry. And 24 building form, my note was there, but we could put it under mass scale. It was just the same sentence we had in the other sections, that a change in wall planes and articulation can be utilized to break, or excuse me, you should use change in wall planes and articulation. It's the same language as the other chapters or zones to break up wall planes.
Okay,
And that was the only sentence that I saw that was missing from what, I didn't try to invent new things. That was just going through my notes of what we said at the meeting. But if others have comments, welcome to make them.
I have, so we have not received really any public comment on this. John, did I see email from you that went out sort of to the normal players in the design development world with this, or has that happened yet? Or
Lindsay, our communications manager, put a blast out. Yes.
well, I would hope that the other architects and designers and developers will take the opportunity to read this and provide comment during the P&Z and town council reviews. I hope that happens, because just to have three of us and staff make these changes is, I think we need to incorporate more feedback from the folks who are working with this document as well. I'll say that I want to spend a little more time studying. We've changed some of the language describing context from context on a block or context in a neighborhood to the word vicinity, and proposed a new map that defines vicinity. I personally want to spend a little more time with that and hope that we get more feedback from, again, the design and development community of what that should be, and should that vicinity be narrowed or broadened. And so I plan to have more interaction with that piece of it.
You know, I think this might have been your sketch, but since there's only this change and that change so far, and I do think, I remember meetings where the whole board did add some value beyond the three of us. Would you like to comment on that diagram now?
I'm
Yeah.
not ready to.
Okay.
I think that's, again, I really hope that others, that bring the applicants really give us some feedback on this, whether it's something that they feel like is an improvement, or if they would suggest anything different.
Well, less than 40% of the American population bother to vote. So, but to your point, maybe a suggestion might be, could we have Lindsay put out a final notice and really suggest before the P and Z meeting? You know, we don't want you got enough on your agenda to have to fumble around with it, that you could just put out a second notice. Last call for, could you
Yes,
ask Lindsay to
I'm
do that?
happy to, yes, I'm happy to. ask
Good.
her to do
And
it.
hit him one more time.
And I'll just add that, I mean, I think that first notice definitely reached at least part of it, the intended audiences. I've had a number of other consultants and architects ask me for a red line copy, and I directed them to the town's website. I mean, there's been interest, but it hasn't led to any feedback yet, but maybe they read it and
Maybe we
thought,
got it
great.
right. Give yourself some credit. Maybe you got it right, but. Okay, so this item is a review and recommendation tonight. And again, we've encouraged, and since we're online here, any public comments on these before the P and Z meeting next week, if you could. But this was a long, arduous task, over 10 meetings, mega hours. I think you came to one or two, I think.
Came to once.
Yeah, you got worn out. You left us. Okay. Anyway, I just want to commend the subcommittee and the whole board for this. Matt's attention to detail, Bob's experience is really creating the original guidelines. When we would say, Bob, why did you write that? And then he'd come up with a suggestion to bring us into the future. So it was a great team effort. And you know what? In 24, as we're in a seminal moment here, I think this was our finest hour as far as an accomplishment, and I hope council sees it that way. So who would like to make the motion?
I should do this one. Okay. Okay. I move to recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the proposed amendments to the Telluride Land Use Code of the Telluride Municipal Code at Chapter 18, Land Use Code, Article 7, Historic and Architectural Review, Division 1, Historic Preservation Overlay District, for the purposes of amending the design guidelines and standards for building in Telluride, January 2016 edition, per Land Use Code Section 7-105A.
Matt will second.
Stacy?
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Okay. A little after 6, we have 3 public hearing items this evening. So we'll start with the Virginia Placer 2B. Consideration application for a preliminary large-scale new construction in the public purpose zone district, which will contain more than 5,000 square foot of floor area per land use code 7203B2A1. Legal description is lot B2R Virginia Placer. According to the plat book 1, page 4898, January 30th, 2017. 446235, continued 13.90 acres. Address is 1200 Black Bear Road. Zone district is public purpose. Owner Town of Telluride. Applicant Caddis Collaborative, and staff member Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So we're here for the review of Virginia Placer 2B. There was a site walk at 3 p.m. with story poles. Does the board feel that the story poles were sufficient?
It was flagging in a rope, no story poles, but I felt like it was sufficient.
Okay,
The height of the project.
so the board feels comfortable proceeding.
I do.
So
Once we
this
looked
is
at the site, I think it helped say
Okay.
we don't need the story poles here.
great. So this is the preliminary large scale review. So if approved tonight, this would be seen again at final review. This project is located in the public purpose zone district in the accommodations treatment area. The accommodations river park corridor overlay and steep lots design guidelines apply. As you can see from the maps, this site is located along Black Bear Road, situated between Virginia Placer Phase 1 and Virginia Placer Phase 2A, which has HARC approval, but construction has not begun. What's unique about this proposal is that the rest of Virginia Placer is located directly adjacent to Black Bear Road. So this is the first proposal that would be located further off the road and on the steep hillside. The project proposes an 11-unit apartment building with covered parking. And we can move on to the conditions. So condition 1 is to set back the 3rd and 4th level to reduce the perceived scale and reflect the natural topography. Condition 2 is to revise the 3rd and 4th levels to better respect pedestrian scale. And condition 3 is to revise the primary facade to have a significant break in the wall plane. There are parts of the building that are set back, mainly the 2-story east massing, but the rest of the building presents as a very vertical form, with parts of the building at 4 stories with no break in the wall plane. There are decks and roof forms that could help to break up the massing, but the overall form is overpowering these elements. And then the steep lots guidelines encourage low profile buildings that minimize the perceived scale. So setting back the 3rd and 4th level would help with compliance with these guidelines. Condition 4 is to break up the primary roof form. The main roof form is over 80 feet in length, which increases the massing. Breaking up this form would help with the perceived scale. Condition 5 is to better step down the west side yard, and condition 6 is to revise the retaining wall on the west side to better contour to the site. The east side of the property steps down with a smaller 2-story form, but the west side does not step down, which is a guideline in steep lots. The retaining wall on the west side is around 20 feet in height, which is much larger than normally seen. Given the site context, a larger retaining wall may be appropriate, but a wall over 20 feet causes concern of massing and pedestrian experience. Condition 7 is to reduce the visibility of the parking area, and condition 8 is to ensure that all parking spaces will be accessible year-round. Since the parking is located on the ground floor as an open garage, it is very visible. Some type of screening could help to conceal this area. 5 parking spaces are uncovered, causing concern over year-round usability. The applicant has not provided details on the plan to how they will keep these spaces usable in the winter. Condition 9 is to add snow guards to the areas of the roof that shed onto pedestrian areas of the parking area. And condition 10 is to ensure that the doors onto decks are no more than 2/3 light. And while it's not a condition, staff encourages HARC to discuss the rusticated metal panels proposed on the upper levels. It's not a commonly used material and does cause concerns over the mass and scale, as metal is normally used closer to the foundation and this is used higher up on the building. And I'm happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant.
Questions for Erica?
I have a question, Erica. It's a little hard to tell from the drawings and 3-dimensional imagery that we have. But it seems to me that in addition to the west side, the east side also has 20-foot tall walls on the southern side, and they start to slope down that enclose those parking spaces. And I'm seeing this from the HARC 07 page is sort of the perspective streetscape. And I'm wondering if that's, perhaps I'm not reading it correctly, and I'll ask the applicant to spin around the model and show us, but I'm wondering if you picked up on that as well, or purposely decided that it wasn't worth putting in a condition.
I think I might have missed that. I was more focused on how that side at least stepped down with the 2-story mass. But that would be something to clarify with the applicant, because I could have missed that. And
Okay.
if it is that tall, it should be included.
And the wall that you're discussing on the west side is the one that's sticks out
East.
past the bike parking, electrical,
Yes.
and where the parking stalls are, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, let's hear from the applicant. If you'd share your screen and introduce yourselves.
I thought they were on Zoom.
There's on east and west. Oh, that breaks it up.
Hello, this is Jim Keogh with Caddis and Bob Wilson.
If you pull the mics just a little closer, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you. This is in addition to the phase 1 Virginia Placer that was done in approximately 2017-18. The design emphasis on this has been drawn from the Virginia Placer phase 1 in its massing, materiality, and the way that these buildings do step into the hillside is very consistent with the boarding house and the apartment building in phase 1. We have 11 units. 2 off to the side are 1-bedrooms, and then the remaining in the taller section of the building are all 2-bedrooms. All right, we got a technical thing here. Okay. There's a short drive up a mild slope into an entryway, vehicular, and then the parking is accessed at the top of that hill. We are proposing the 5-foot setback to the wetlands, and that we'll be working with Chris Hazen on that. The landscape plan addresses in the same manner that we did in phase 1, planting and remediation in that zone. You can see the bike parking off to the left west there. There's some storage and other aspects of utilities and sprinkler system in the back wall. The retaining wall will be a hill figure wall, so it's like a gabion wall with rocks and cages, similar to what we did in front of the boarding house that is overgrown and you can't see it these days. I do have a picture of the boarding house, and you can see how it is. Now, this is the apartment building adjacent to this site, which is indicative of the kind of cladding approach we've taken. We have added some wood siding that is on the bottom of the page. You can see the phase 2A that was approved in 2022, I believe, and that has wood on it. So we're trying to pull this development together and have all the buildings feel like they're associated to each other, not identical by any means. But this building, because it is in the hillside, and the building on the bottom of the page is not, it's more like the boarding house or the apartment building here. So we have a similar shed roof, and it's tucked a story and a half into the hillside. And we've got vertical siding metal. We've got corrugated metal as well. And then the rusted, we call it flat lock, but it's a panel, it's a larger panel that locks together. And you can see that third picture from the left. And then also the use of natural wood timber elements to contrast with the starker, the more metal appeal. And the rest of the siding is up there, as well as there's a back wall that you'll see in the elevations that we are screening from the back with polycarbonate material. So that's a polycarbonate opaque, it lets light through, daylighting system, and it'll block the wind and stop snow from really getting into the backside where the stairs are. And I think we can move on. Bob will walk you through the elevation.
Oh, hey, Jim, real quick, while you're on that slide,
Sure.
what's the height increase over the neighboring apartment house at the top of that ridge line?
From, I have those drawings, I could pull them up and tell you, but I'm believing it's, the apartment building steps up from the road by 3 to 4 feet. And our garage is.
Yeah, sorry, this is Bob Wilson, also from Caddis. So I believe that phase 2A, the ground floor level is at, I think, 8715, if I recall correctly. And our grade level, parking level is 8724. So.
Is that?
Well, but then- Well, but but the thing is, now it's up on the hill. My question is, though, we're not deliberating. My question is, taking into account that it starts 9 feet higher, how much taller is this building than the adjacent? I'm thinking context of the neighborhood and the almost replica projects.
Yeah, I would say approximately a story and a half
Yeah, taller.
tall.
Yeah.
Than 2A.
That's what I assume.
Well,
but-
from 2A, but then from
Yeah.
phase 1, it's very similar in that it's probably more like a half a story.
Okay, thank you. Keep going.
Bob will walk you through the elevations.
Yeah, I'll just elaborate a little bit on what Jim had mentioned. I think ultimately what we're really trying to do is tie this building in with the existing buildings phase 1 and then also 2A from a material standpoint as well as just a building form standpoint. I think there are actually maybe more similarities with phase 1 in this case. The main distinction being the tuck under parking at ground level there. So the ground level has the podium parking deck in addition to a 1-bedroom unit on the east side of the building. And then you can see the massing, there's an additional 1-bedroom unit that stacks above that. And then above the parking, we've got 3 levels of residential. And we've tried to take some measures on that upper level, recognizing that the three-story massing can get a little imposing. So we've broken down the roof forms, we've stepped one of the units back. I think per the comments from Eric, we could certainly step those that singular plane there in the middle. We could certainly step those units back perhaps at the upper level to provide a little bit of relief. But at the end of the day, we're really trying to keep the construction as articulated as we can, but also simple from a construction standpoint. And I'll just say real quickly that we recognize that the retaining walls, both on the east and west side, are imposing at this point. And we will be taking some measures to step that wall and introduce some landscaping to really kind of break that down a little bit.
And the concrete is represented as board form concrete, so it's not a stark, smooth wall. It's got some texture.
Okay,
I have a question. Is the roof slope on 2B the same as on the adjacent building
I
to the
believe
east?
so. I think that's a 2 and 12, and that's what we're proposing as well. So,
do you have comments on some of the other conditions? Or do you have more?
Well, the articulation of the building, we did articulate that the entryway, you can see here in the upper image, that we have stepped that building back on the third residential level. And on the front, we've also stepped it back on that third residential level. And then on the other end, the west end, you can see how that whole volume has been pushed back as well. So those articulations were very mindful of the mass, but you do have those two units in the center that is the rather tall together, and further articulation could be developed.
yeah, and I think there was one other comment. I don't know if I'm addressing all of those initial comments, but the parking screening, I think that we could potentially offer some semi-transparency at that garage level, maybe material that's similar to the deck railing, for example, to screen that parking. We can take a look at something like that. And then I think another was the potential for how to address all-season parking for the open spaces. And so we'll be looking into that as well, whether or not we can provide some cover and or do something with the slab.
Yeah, we do think that on the west end, that in maybe even on the east end, parking could have open sheds that would alleviate and cover up those cars in the winter, alleviate snow pileup. But there is this being in this zone, there's noted some snow storage off to the sides there to the east. I will note, if you go out to the site again, the corner of that building almost lines up with the back corner of the apartment building. I'm looking at the apartment building in Virginia Placer, and we got a 2.5% slope. So this is slightly lower, and I think that we have a slightly deeper section of building because Virginia Placer Phase 1 was accessed between units, and this is accessed in the rear because of the parking. So we have a little more excess in depth, which if we increase the roof height, we'd be maybe going up so that the top plate of that top floor in the back can remain at a code compliant normal height for that walkway. So does that explain? Anything else, Bob?
Not really, other than just maybe flying through the plans very quickly, if that's helpful at all. This is looking at grade level, so this is obviously showing all the parking, the one bedroom unit here off to the side, all of the circulation and horizontal and vertical circulation is happening on the south side of the building. Levels 2 and 3 here. You can see the additional one bedroom unit off to the east, and then 3 2-bedrooms, and that's similar for level 3. And then level 4 is also those same 2-bedroom units with one sort of standalone 2-bedroom unit that steps back at this east end. And these are just a couple of perspective renderings just to give a sense of relative scale with the two buildings.
Yeah, so when you were out at the site, you saw the back wall of the dumpster storage area, and that's what's on the left there. And then on the right is the building that basically sits to phase 2A, basically sits right at the parking line of parking that is there in front of the Public Works beyond the gate.
Okay.
I'm going to attempt to access the model. I've got to stop sharing this screen and go to a separate one.
While you're doing that on Park 01 site plan, just where the avalanche hazard area is, because I guess most of these that we do are not in the avalanche hazard areas. Is there any kind of special requirement, like kind of how you do the rock fence wall for any areas that are in, rockfall areas? Is there any kind of mitigation you're required to have part of the parking and like what would be the pedestrian walkway and driveway kind of being in that hazard zone? Is that a concern at all?
Well, we have dealt with that in both the boarding house and in the past. And that hazard zone, you can see encompasses some.
Yeah, so Lance development in town. So the best way to deal with this hazard of avalanche is also a debris flow, rock and debris flow, is to avoid it. So we stay out of it. And with the road, Public Works access road is in that same path, the same debris flow. So having our access road, and there's the same risk or the same thought as having the Public Works road. But the best way to deal with that hazard is just don't get that.
So right behind the building is not considered an avalanche hazard?
No, we have a map, and there are several avalanche paths that are, well, actually, behind Public Works, all the way to towards Shandoken. And so the Virginia class or earlier phases were sited out of those zones. And like this project is also being sited out of those zones. So, walking outside would be great just to put it right there in that nice grassy slope that you see by the cul-de-sac, but that is the terminus of that path. So that's kind of a zone.
Right. And there's no concern if there's a vehicle going up and down, it's on a catastrophic, I'm getting hypotheticals, but if you had a burn fire and then all of a sudden heavy floods and that path gets larger and then it becomes a problem, or if as is to where it kind of spills over that sidewall or affects any traffic coming in and out.
I think the bigger concern would be the access into our Public Works facilities, all of our plows and equipment. That's, the town code does allow these types of roads to be placed in those areas, Tomboy roads and others.
Yeah.
But yes, you're allowed to have driveways and roads within those areas, but not buildings. So yeah, there's a concern. And, but mitigating that hazard is kind of interesting because where would you actually mitigate? High or down low?
Mhm.
So, but the rock wall that comes into the town of Telluride from the cliffs on the south facing slope is a real thing. And there's required mitigation if you're building houses in those rock walls. That's on a case by case basis. And we're avoiding that hazard. So yes, it does cross the driveway and town code allows it.
Thanks,
Yep,
Lance.
thank you.
What else, guys?
Well, I'll just fly through the model here just to give
Okay.
you all a little better sense of the relative scale and form of the building. This is an aerial perspective, sort of northwest perspective. You can see phase 1 up here on the upper left, and then this is approximately where we'd see phase 2A. Then going back quickly, this is the entry, a similar perspective as to what we were just looking at in the two-dimensional streetscapes. And then I'll just sort of pick some additional views. This is a little bit further up the drive, heading towards the parking. Of course, this is a retaining that we'll be taking measures to reduce the impact. This is looking back towards the parking. This is the stack of one-bedroom units here. This is from the northwest corner, looking back east.
And this indicates, we have a shed roof over the bike parking, which could potentially be expanded if it was more to cover some of the parking on that west side.
Some images of the corridor on the south side of the building.
Do a picture of the balcony. There you can see the translucent material that we're encouraging to just block the stairs from blowing snow and
This is looking back at the building from the east side.
Since you're on this view, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Erica indicated in her presentation that the overall roof width, I think she had 81 feet. What are these eve lengths of the upper roof here that we're looking at?
Oh, yeah, I don't know if I did mention on.
I can let you know. And, you know, it was very intentional that we broke those up.
Yeah, so just, I mean, it's a fairly easy. So this dimension here, roughly from the midpoint of this unit over to this demising wall here is 26 feet. So add on another 13, I guess.
Yeah, so that's the center one is 40, the one off to the west, shedding the other direction is 12, and then the one on east is.
But that setback, it looks like a huge setback on the left side of the main building. When you look at the roof plan on 04, it's only, a few feet.
Yeah, so yeah, it's the wall of the balcony, the wall, the building, if you look at the top floor plan, that unit does not have a bump out that surrounds the balcony like the others. So that's the dimension of the setback at that unit, that corner.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
And then,
Okay.
and then we further set back at the bathroom and the bedroom.
Sorry, so
That you can't see her.
I might have missed it. So the part that projects further south is 40 feet. And to the east of that, the upper roof,
To the east was 20,
20.
and to the west was 12, and that's shedding the other way.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Can you clarify where this polycarbonate material is on a elevation, or maybe the 3D view works as well?
Shows up.
I don't know how evident it is here, but you can sort of get a sense of those screens that's in the back. So this is the south.
The whole, all those are
South side. of the
filled.
building.
That's
So
the one that says
at
poly.
each of the
Yeah.
stair cores, adjacent to the stair cores on that rear side of the building is where we would anticipate those panels. being.
So just the two bays
Yeah,
Two bays.
on the west and the two bays in the east, and not the center.
And you can
three.
see that in the south elevation.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see in
It's
our,
hard to
Yeah.
see, but.
So, yeah, I only see
those two
poly
bays-
one,
Yes, Stacy.
indicated one place. Is it in multiple places?
those two and those two.
Is there a way for you to go to your elevation and just sort of circle or draw with your mouse?
Yeah, I can share. I've got it up right now.
They're covered and they're covered, but they're screwed.
There's four.
So you can see there,
Those two.
I just
And those
kind
two,
of
but
updated
not those
the
three.
file. You can see how it would just be a panel system, and it would have a frame system with it. So look here.
And-
Here.
And that's to protect, I gather, the stairs
Yeah,
egress.
yeah, yes, yes. And it's, you know, it's into the hillside. So it's just gonna make those stairs a little more pre-approved.
Other questions?
I have another question. So on the material palette, a lot of these images, and I'm assuming materials are the same or very similar to what we've just saw in the last 5 affordable housing projects. There's obviously a lot of similarity with the architecture and the material palette to what's adjacent to these projects. I'd like to, when we get deliberations to the board, ask them what they think about that. Are you guys open to changing up that materiality or that detailing or scale of those materials?
Yeah, I can clarify that the image on the left is from the apartment building. The image in the middle is the corrugated metal you see as you drive down Black Bear Road. Most evident on the tiny homes. This is from the boarding house. And then we have a metal roof. And then this material is proposed on phase 2A, which is the building that I started out that has approval, that was the base. So we are incorporating some of that, expanding on the original Virginia plaster to incorporate some composite wood siding. And then there's the image of polycarbonate.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, let's hear from the public on this project. If you would like to speak to this, please raise your hand electronically or come up to the mic and please share your name. We ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. And I don't see any. Okay, no public comment. Thank you, guys. We'll start a deliberation. I mean, Erica, thank you. I think you've done a good job with 1 through 10. I have notes that I'm assuming there could be 2 other possible conditions, but does everybody agree with 1 through 10? And then state if so, are there other ones you would like to add?
Well, I do want to discuss them, I guess. On number 1, certainly the direction to set back at the 3rd and 4th levels consistent with our direction in this same zone district on some other projects. However, in looking at the boarding house that was approved, there are, they're only 3-story, not 4, but there are vertical planes there. This is a bit of a different scenario. They're on quite narrow lots, which is somewhat different than some other ones we've seen. So number one, maybe I don't feel as strongly about as some of the other ones.
Is it primarily the 3rd level that you're?
Well,
the condition
well,
can say
here
3rd and 4th,
it's,
if you step
I
back
think
to
it's
4.
really the 4th
Mhm.
for me. And I was trying to ask myself if that's because there's a material change there, but I think it's really that is where the verticality starts to get out of whack mass and scale wise.
And to your point, adjacent, it's to the apartments, it's 15 feet higher and it's a half story taller than phase one. And it's perched up higher, so you notice that vertical plane more, it's just part of the land. And by the way, we're not dealing normally with 4 stories, but anyway, so
Well, I just wanted to discuss it, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'd
Discussing.
like to, you had like a aerial looking
Yeah.
at the face of the building. I think that's pretty telling.
I understand, I think where you're coming from with that comment. To me, it is mostly the 4th story. Leaving Erica's condition as is, I would be fine with it. Also be fine with eliminating the 3rd and adding the word significant to the 4th level.
And this is, I'm speaking to the same thing here. When you look at this, it really reads as a 4-story plane. You do have some setbacks, in the corners and the decks, but it reads as a plane all the way across there to me. And so I could see some pushback even on the 3rd level a bit, and maybe a little more on the 4th to break that up.
I agree. I think the 4th is more important, but it would definitely benefit to have the 3rd level also articulate.
good with that, Andrew?
Yep.
So the language could read setback the 3rd and significantly, Matt's word, setback the 4th. Is
I
that?
don't know if that's what Stacy's getting
That's
at.
not what that's sort of the opposite of what I was saying. I'm saying to be consistent with the project right next door that we approved fairly recently. I mean, not 10 years ago or 15
Right.
years ago, there's a 3-story plane in that project because these lots are
Mhm.
have less depth than some other lots that are on more traditional lots in town. Because of that, I'm okay with the 3 up to the 3rd level being the same plane. I think for me, it's the 4th. So I would, if I were gonna make a motion, maybe strike 3rd. Set back the 4th level to reduce.
Significantly, whose word was that?
I wouldn't add
Matt's?
that word personally, but
So
I think I'd still like to see some articulation at the 3rd.
Yeah, me too.
I would too, but condition 2 and 3 don't expressly say, well, it does say 3rd level. There's going to be other sort of articulation that will happen from those conditions.
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3, you're breaking the primary facade. Revise the 3rd and 4th levels, set back the 3rd and 4th levels. I think the direction is there, as well as breaking up the roof.
I understand what Stacy's saying. I'd be fine with either leaving it as it is or striking the 3rd level reference on condition 1. And not adding significant.
I would say leave it. As is.
I
I
mean,
think she's got it covered.
I think we're gonna see this again, because it's a mass and scale issue, so. If we don't have the word significantly in, I would hope the applicant would at least examine that it might be further setback on the 4th floor. Could we at least agree to that than the 3rd? Because the 4th's more concerning to, well, Stacy and, well,
I would assume they wouldn't come back with cantilevered 4th level, so.
okay.
I don't think that they're gonna do that.
All right, but what about the height? Since it's a full half story taller than the adjacent building we approved, as far as consistency.
But it's starting out at a higher level, isn't it, too?
No, but I mean, just the building height is what I knew, understood. It was 9 feet higher to begin with, to the site.
The grade,
And then it was a half story taller or 1.5 story taller. So 2 buildings. Am I correct? I think, Bob?
Yeah, that's almost 20.
So, yeah,
I think if they set back the 4th and they articulate the 3rd a little bit more and the other conditions Erica has in here, I'm fine with the height. I think you're gonna end up with a similar center or high mass on one side or the other. And given that it's pushed back so far off the road.
and you're looking
into the
up at it
tree.
anyway, it's gonna look big.
yeah, I did wonder a little bit why, and then I came up with my own reasoning why I think it's this way, but the fact that the roof slopes the way it does and doesn't ever break and slope the other direction causes the height to be accentuated. But look, that's the only place that there's any light coming from. And it's the only place where there's any view. And so it's all about extenuating circumstance. I think in this case, given where it is in the zone district, it is tall. But I'm okay with it,
Mhm.
given the other things going on.
But are you okay that it's taller than the ones we approved right next door?
I am.
I am too. I think if there, it's more articulation.
It's further back
Okay.
from,
I agree.
Well, if they significantly set back the fourth, I'd give up on the height. But we won't get into semantics.
well,
You know, it's the straw poll is leave it the way it's written, third and fourth, and see what they come back with. They've kind of heard the tone of our.
Yeah.
And hopefully the fourth is more than the third, but then we'll just leave it.
I'm fine with leaving it.
Okay.
I think they've heard what we've all had to
And,
say.
and no consideration of height, just straw poll, just to keep moving.
Right.
No, okay. Okay, well, and then 2 through 10. Well, we
Well,
kind of discussed
so
2,
4,
4.
we're
Oh, yeah.
done with 1, 2, and 3. So 4, I understand where Eric is coming from. It is, the roof right now is one plane. Well, the
Yeah.
primary roof is one plane with two small
Two little guys. Yeah.
opposing sheds on either side. Especially in this view,
It's terrible.
which you will never see
I know,
unless
You're flying over.
hang gliding.
you're reincarnated as a bird. I think they have gone to some effort to break up the roof plane and that's why I asked my questions about the eave. You know, in this view here, that roof is broken up. Is that significant? Or, I mean, sorry, is that sufficient? Or does it need to change plane? I guess that's the question.
I think it would certainly help if it has one change of plane in there, even if it's just, say a third of that roof and it's still, there's a predominantly large shed. And I'm fine with the 212 slope or on that.
And that could lead to some dormer condition on the south side because of head height or something.
Sure, or, as this is probably the most important sort of
Yeah.
vantage point. If the eastern side upper stories are set back a little, set down a little bit with the plane, change in plane with the roof form, I think that would help the massing significantly.
So how do we want to word number 4?
I think it's fine.
I think it's gonna happen when you do all the other.
Yeah.
1, 2,
Okay.
3.
Yeah, in a way, I was just clarifying. So it's
Okay,
break up the primary roof form, meaning make it so that it's not one plane.
and 6, we need to add east and west on the retaining wall language, right? Not just west.
I think you could just say revise the retaining walls, all of them,
Oh, walls.
to better contour to the site. And we don't necessarily have to say east or
Alright.
west or
Good idea.
the northeast and southeast or whatever.
Thank you.
And should we talk about that a little bit more and give them a little bit more direction? And
Sure.
some of these are 20, 21 feet tall. What are we comfortable with? I think that what the code says 30 inches or 4 feet, but are we comfortable if they terraced it, at 2 10-foot walls, or do we want to see 4 terraces, or what's, it's a challenging site.
Yeah,
It's a
I think
steep
you'd be
hillside.
getting messy if you did too many of them, but
Right.
a change of plane.
But a bit of terracing allows, like they said, the wall is already overgrown or already has, that overgrown's bad. Sounds negative, not positive. It already has, planting materials obscuring it. And the more times it's terraced, the more opportunity there is for that to happen.
Got to pick a number. I think 4 is too many and maybe 3 is the right number to terrace and plant something.
I'm gonna say that if I think if they came back and showed us one terrace, so we split these 20 feet into 2 10-foot sections, I think that might be enough. I'm not gonna say that's enough until we see it again, but that's my feeling about it.
Stacy,
I'd probably want to see 3 sections, 2 breaks.
straw poll, how many breaks?
I could do it with 1, but 2 would be fine too.
Anybody?
I gotta leave that to you guys.
I mean, I'm kind of like Matt, like to see it, but my instinct says 3, but you want to say 2 or 3 and see what they come up with?
I think that's fine. I think the comment about, you don't want to see 6 or 8,
No.
that's
Well,
gonna just expand out too much.
I also don't think we need to change anything. It says revise the retaining wall to better contour to the
No,
site.
All
We
right.
don't. I
Okay.
just wanted them to
Okay.
hear, some consciousness behind.
So they come back with it.
Yeah.
Like we want, okay. And then 7 through 10, oh, what about this 7, the screening? Anybody got any,
Reduce the visibility of the parking area.
I mean, should we
I mean,
suggest some screening there.
does landscaping cover that?
Well, here's the deal. This project's gonna exist this way for about 2 growing seasons, and then that lowest level of growth is gonna obscure.
can see it.
I mean, we were all out there today. I went out to Blackbird Road. The wetlands are right there in front.
They're not
It,
changing.
it's gonna be pretty obscured. I
Maybe
I might
not.
almost strike 7. Because I think that's gonna happen.
How about the visibility of the, at the ends? At the east and west end?
You gotta get in there. I mean,
Cause that's where you get in.
But if they did, if they put a roof over those, so they're protected, which takes care of, 8, would help 8. I think I could go away with, I could eliminate 7.
And do what to 8?
Paneling work there.
Hmm.
It's used on the back. Would that help at all and keep snow out of there?
I think
I don't
that's,
think
I think
you-
we should talk about those polycarbonate panels. I mean, I think we got to think of that as glazing.
Mhm.
And I understand what they're trying to do there, and I
Mhm.
don't necessarily disagree with it. It will not be visible to anyone. It will not provide any glare to anyone. I just think
It's
we
gonna
could
be-
talk about it,
It's gonna be a mess within 2 years.
just the material
Yeah.
itself.
Just all the stuff that
It's,
is on there.
I'm okay with it. We can't, we're not gonna see it.
yeah, we don't see it, so it doesn't matter.
No harm, no foul. And we're gonna cross out 7. Everybody okay? Not demanding screening, or what do you wanna do?
I'm fine either way. I would leave it in there just so that if they can do something to respond to it,
Oh, okay.
that'd be great. But,
Right.
I don't necessarily think it's the most important condition.
Okay, you're hearing the tone of the board, so you guys surprise us.
I have I've already talked about well, I have a couple things I want to chat about. There's a note on the surveying saying it's maybe not up to date, it's 7 years old, should require a more updated survey in the next packet.
I didn't see that.
So we know exactly where it's going, you mean,
Well, it's just, I mean, it's
from the
an
wetlands?
out-of-date survey. I don't know if there's anything new or different. Can't remember if
2016.
But they told us on site they have a new one. But you know, wetland delineation survey,
Existing conditions improvement survey from Foley.
how will that affect our conditions?
I don't-
No set, you, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not worried, but it seems like an unnecessary hoop to get an updated survey that'll show the same information.
So, yeah, there's a note on here. The survey is prepared for phase 1 may not necessarily reflect the most current condition information, and you have gone ahead and working on that.
Okay, what else, Matt?
So window size proportion, they're not, some of these are pretty large square windows.
Yeah.
They're not exactly historic. I don't feel strongly that they necessarily need to be in this particular neighborhood, but I just wanted to bring that up and see if anybody had comments.
I don't have a problem with it.
Are you talking about like the ones on the 4th story?
Just the larger square ones, and if Bob doesn't have an issue with that.
I think if we considered glazing at, whole project glazing.
Yeah.
It's just concentrated on the south side because that's the only place you could have a
Yeah.
window. I mean,
And there's no light coming in these buildings from any other side.
I'm okay with it. Again, you're not gonna see it.
Yeah.
So the neighbors, there's no neighbor, the beavers and
And then the only other thing I wanted to discuss is just the material and the detailing. I mean, again, it's images, the materials. We've seen a lot of this in the last 6 months.
Mhm.
Do we have any direction of this is totally fine, or we'd like to see more variation in these buildings, or the detailing or the articulation, or not?
My opinion is it ties in with the other buildings out there. And so I don't have a problem with it.
my only question was, Eric, is the amount of rusticated panels versus usually they're in an accent, or we've done this before, or they're on the first level, but it's a little overpowering. But let's throw it out there.
I'm fine with the rusticated panels.
I'm
I think
fine
it's
with it.
Successful in the adjacent buildings. So.
I think we're all good. Even me. What else?
That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
So actually,
I think we want to see it again before we do.
sure.
Well,
It's a preliminary.
even if we approve it, we'll see it again.
But do we want to see with these changes first? I think we should see it.
I think we made an exception last time on match and scale and warned the applicant that we weren't happy with match and scale, but I think there's a number of parameters. It's not just setting it back a few more feet. I mean, that have something to do with match scale. I think we should continue it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And July, I guess the applicant said they're okay with July. It's enough time. Okay. So really the motion,
So, the June meeting is a week earlier than normal, which means it's in 3 weeks instead of 4.
what we need to go to July no matter what. So I think with what else we got in the queue here, so. But that means the motion would read 1 through 10 except for 7. Do I have that right?
Number 6 is the slight modification.
Oh, walls,
And we'll.
Okay, those
and
are
blank
two.
out
And
on the
strike
west-
on the west side.
right. Who wants to make it?
I'll make a motion. I move to continue to the July 17, 2024 HARC meeting, the preliminary large-scale application at 1200 Black Bear Road, Virginia Placer Phase 2B, based on the staff memo dated May 15th, 2024 with the following conditions. 1 through 5, as stated in the staff memo. 6 will be revised to read, revise the retaining walls to better contour the site per AC 12.a and AC 18.c.1. I would like to strike number 7 and maintain 8 through 10 as stated in the staff memo. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing on May 15, 2024, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
Matt will second.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Take a quick break.
4-minute bio,
That's fine.
3.5.
I'm running as fast as I can.
Number 4 was to provide a bear-proof trash enclosure. The trash enclosure is proposed at the southwest corner of the west unit. A detail of the trash enclosure is provided on sheet A201. Condition number 5 was to provide a sample of the proposed stone veneer. The applicants were to bring a sample. I don't know if you did or have one in your presentation. Condition number 6 was to ensure all exterior doors, including patio doors, are no more than 2/3 light. A note has been added specifying 2/3 light doors on each of the elevations. Condition number 7 was to revise the asphalt shingles to a more durable traditional material, and those have been revised to standing seam metal, which condition number 8 was to label the paving material. If you recall previously, all of the parking was adjacent to Tomboy Street. Now that the parking is entirely covered, there's less paving at the front. So that condition has been removed, but could be discussed further if Park wishes. Condition number 9 was to coordinate surface parking spaces with garage doors to improve access to the garage parking spaces. Previously, the parking spaces were not well aligned with the garage spaces. Again, that issue's been resolved by placing the parking under the buildings. Condition number 10 was to reduce the height of the buildings a full story. With the parking now proposed under the buildings, a full story has not been eliminated, but the overall height has been reduced by 2.5 feet on the west and center unit and by 3.5 feet on the east unit. Excuse me. The condition number 11 was if a metal roof is used, prevent snow and ice shedding on adjacent properties. And this condition has been retained as a condition of the final CA plans. Condition number 12 was clearly define the primary entrance. The entrances are now above grade and defined by the stairs. Condition number 13 was to provide sidewalks and bike lanes, excuse me, that are protected from the traffic. And providing parking under the building will actually reduce the interactions of pedestrian and bike traffic, as there's just one access point from Tomboy Street into the parking area. Condition number 14 was to revise the parking design to better comply with AC number 20. And again, the parking has been redesigned. It's better screened from view and subordinate to other site views. In the memo, staff wrote options either to approve or continue. I'm actually recommending that this application be continued once more. A couple of things have come up since the packet was posted, and one of those is the way the height was calculated. I think the applicants have addressed that, and we'll show you how they've addressed it. But one of the new conditions is also to step back the upper level on the east facing gable. Again, I think pedestrian scale hasn't quite been achieved on this north-south portion of Tomboy Street. So I'm happy to answer any questions or let Jim and Noel proceed with their presentation. Excuse me.
Questions for Jonna?
I have a question, John. So in the public comment packets, there was, and you might just say the applicant will address this, but there's this commentary about the internal lot lines changing between this project and the project just to the north that we approved. And it looks to me like they have changed. And I just want to know if you have any data on that or information from the applicant, or just have them describe what's happened there.
I have shared that with the applicants, and I believe they will address that during their presentation.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, will the applicant share the screen, please? Oh, go ahead and read your name in the mic. Yes, joined us.
Jim Kehoe with Kehoe Studio Works. Sorry, just got kicked off Zoom. Oh, that happened. Yeah.
Okay.
I've asked her to unmute.
Back.
All right, it looks like Jim's getting this pulled up. Good evening, Lindsay Newman with Norris Design. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, I'll talk really loud.
That's
Too loud, too
yeah.
loud.
There
Okay,
you go. That's better.
I'll talk normal volume. All right, so we're excited tonight to be presenting our site design for the Tower House Townhomes. We saw you last in March and we have done some reworking since then, as you've seen. If you want to head to the conditions slide there, Jim. You know, we went through quite a few conditions at our last meeting, and based on these, the design team made a decision to rework this design to create better pedestrian connectivity and safety, to provide more building articulation, more setback variety, more prominent entrances to the homes, and better parking design to address a lot of those comments that we heard in March very holistically. And as Jonna mentioned, to address the height, all of the roofs, I wanted to just point out, are below the 35-foot height limit for the LUC. We do have a PUD variation that was approved to allow us to go up to 40 feet. And we're only using that really for 2 inches additional height on the center building. So that's a big reduction from the previous submittals that you guys have seen on this site, which were 39.98 feet basically on all 3 modules with no change across those. So we're hoping that we're starting to meet your conditions a lot more on how the height looks and really staying within our land use code guidelines for height on this site, even though we do have that approved PUD. So we'll walk through the site plan a little bit here. Overall, our concept for the site plan has remained the same. So we still have 3 townhomes on 3 lots for the Tower House site. We have parking on the south side of the site. We have that pedestrian connectivity shown in red that goes north-south. And we still have that shared central courtyard space between the condos and the townhomes. So none of that has changed. As was mentioned, the Tower House lot size and exterior property lines for the site have not changed at all. Everything has remained the same. What has changed were there are minor adjustments to the internal subdivision lot lines based on the redesigned site plan. And so this will be memorialized with our final subdivision, which we have not applied for yet because we were waiting to get a final design approved for the townhomes. So with this is, yes,
Lindsay, you're saying the property line did not change?
the
And
interior.
from the last meeting where some of the square footage was taken onto this property as far as property lines, not the building?
Interior lot lines have shifted, yes.
Thank you.
Exterior property lines remain exactly the same. I know there might have been some discrepancy there with maybe scaling in the packet, but yes, our interior property lines have shifted very slightly. We still maintain permitted site coverage per the staff report. So overall, with this redesign, we've greatly improved our site circulation by covering 100% of the on-site parking. So we have a podium parking structure along the southern property boundary there. It's accessed by about a 15-foot width drive lane. So that will create really great traffic calming for vehicles entering and exiting the site off Tomboy. And we do also have included a 4-foot pedestrian sidewalk along our southern property line. So that will connect into the sidewalk that we're proposing along the eastern side of our site, connecting folks up to Colorado Avenue. We have removed, previously we had a parking lot that was one curb cut across our whole site. Now we just have this one curb cut spot. So we're feeling like pedestrian safety has really greatly increased. By covering our parking, we've also been able to increase our landscaping along the southern property line. So this will really create a better pedestrian experience that's more in character with other sidewalks that are seen throughout town. We've also, with the increased landscape, we've been able to increase our need for our space for snow storage while reducing the need for snow storage because of all of our parking is covered. So we have more area than we needed to store snow. And then in addition, in our central courtyard space, we're still maintaining the area towards the west as snow storage so that we can remove all of the snow within our courtyard circulation space and store it on site. Overall, just in summary here, we have read staff conditions and we concur with those. In regards to condition number 2, which was the step down on the east facade, we've looked at modifications in advance of the meeting. We just, we didn't want to be doing any live modeling because that can get kind of messy. So we wanted to come in with some design considerations for you to see tonight that could break up the appearance of that 2-story facade just in a way that we've studied from an architectural perspective to address this condition in a thoughtful way. And Jim will give you all some more information on that, and I'll turn it over to him to talk more in detail on the architecture.
Thank you, Lindsay. Like Lindsay said, this was a fully redesigned project incorporating the parking and increasing the landscaping, and calming traffic and addressing the concerns for pedestrians. Furthermore, the stepping on the south facade starts with the entryways to the units that sit one level above the parking, with 2 stair entries, and we can go over that on the coming slides. As an overview, we have decks also breaking up the facade. We have rotated the easternmost gable to address Tomboy, and then the other 2 gables to the west and the center are facing south. We have incorporated, because of the parking and some of the access, we've incorporated some accentuated detailing architectural, you can see here, with tie rods and collar ties for the decks, and attributes to screening the garage area. And we have altered the finish on the screen wall to a bronze rather than galvanized. And then we have we do not have stone, so we do not have a stone sample. I do apologize, but we are proposing board form concrete at the base, which is largely shielded and screened by planting.
While we're talking about materials, just quickly, the cross bracing is combined with the metal screening. That's the 6th element in the squares.
Yes,
Okay.
right here. Those 2 items go
Just wanna make
together.
sure that's
And,
what we're
and again, I think it's an articulation that helps the pedestrian scale as on those 2 facades where the sidewalks exist. Just the overview slide. This is the south elevation, Tomboy here, the rotated gable at the east unit, and the 2 gables facing the mountain, and this is the entryway. Right here, pedestrian access here, pedestrian access here. There's doorways here. You'll see later that we have used this access way on the upper level to access these 2 units as primary, but we do have decks, and this is a primary entrance to the west. Moving through here, I'll start with the south facade. These lower roofs, again, I think address some concern for pedestrian scale. And then the buildings and the masts of the units step back from those elements further to the north. And there's a number of step backs that we can see in the 3D. But it's not just one step back. It's articulated on both the main level, the upper level, and as well as the volume of space that's within the gable roof form, call it an attic. Those are recessed as well with decks that protrude slightly out from the facade. This entryway is pushed back a fair amount to further accentuate a step back at that entry. We'll look at the east facade on Tomboy. We have added this above the articulated screening of the parking. We have added the detail of the collar ties holding up a shed roof to further accentuate that ground level floor. And again, that roof, the second floor of the unit steps back, introduced and interrupted by a deck that's facing this Tomboy, and then another 18-inch step back here at the gable end. And then the back side of the building steps back. This roof turns the corner and goes west at that north facade. This dormer is set back 18 inches from this wall, and I think that was the concern with regards to the way that the height was calculated. So that has been addressed and recognized and altered. Moving over here to the west side, you can see that the shadow line here of that entryway cuts the corner of the southwest, further stepping back to the main level, and the articulation of the siding. I'll get into the siding as well. Introduction of the walkways, again, is a pedestrian attribute and an entryway signifier for the 3 units. And we are planning on planting beds on all 3 sides, south, east, and west. This is the north facade. The rear of the building faces the condos, and we have articulated windows for daylighting, but not a lot of view windows. Few on each building. Here's the dormer that was in question that has been set back into the roof. And these 2 up here are the internal corridor between the center unit and the east unit. And you can see the primary access to those units are within that corridor, accessed by this single stair that comes from the sidewalk that we have introduced into the project. And here you can see the gables set back on the west building, east facade, the center unit from that of the westernmost unit, and then again further setbacks, articulation on that east building, and then increasing the amount of detailing, incorporating knife plates and timber elements at the entryway here, and you'll see that around the building on some other areas where we're shading window elements to break this facade up. What we are proposing here is a board form concrete base that's open on 3 sides and closed on the back side. The corrugated, not the corrugated, we don't have corrugated on this project. The standing seam metal is an accent on the base of these two, the center and the east. The bronze is associated with the collar tie element of that detail at the base, at the open areas of the garage. We have taken some consideration to move away from any of the colorations of the prior projects. And we have 2 vertical composite siding panels and 1 horizontal. And that horizontal is light in color, call it an off-white. And then we have more of a wood tone, 2 tones. You can see here and here at the siding. So you can see how that siding is articulated through the buildings, trying to articulate each building rather differently, along with the articulations of the recesses at the decks. And at the main entryway, you can begin to see here the detailing of the timber elements that we have within that entry corridor that's open access, and then the collar ties, and then a horizontal wood siding with some steel on the decks at the east building, and we continue with the vertical siding at the decks, the deck rails within the other 2 buildings. Again, just more modifications throughout the project for breaking up the 3 buildings into more separate feeling structures. We can look at this view here, a little glimpse of the setback on the condo building that we ended with the last meeting, but more particular here is the setback on the east facade of the townhome here, where we're setting back the front on the first level, garage with a shed articulating that front face as that shed comes down, articulates the sidewalk, and then a further stepping back here, and then the rotated gable with a setback here and a setback there to that dormer. This is a view looking northeast, and this one really does indicate quite a bit of the setbacks and the detailing that we've added to the project, for the articulations of the decks, the walk-ups to the entryways via the stairs, and then the articulation of the garage screen walls, and furthermore, how we've really moved around the project and articulated the masses in concert with the cladding elements. And again, here you can see how our base and plantings will also enhance the pedestrian way. Again, here's the garage opening. Obviously, and here's the corner view looking northwest. You can see the condo building to the north, and the articulation of the walkway here with the roof with the collar tie that ties into these as well. And then this is a setback. Here's a setback. This roof and this gable is set back from the gable of the west, further articulating the building mass. And then dormers. Let's see if there's anything I've missed. Yes, oh, we've articulated, we have a two-step fascia on these buildings. And we've done, we've incorporated corner trim and trim around the windows. And then you can see that the fascias of all the roofs have a two-step appearance, and there's a shadow line there. And I believe, thank you for that, yes, that's the presentation.
Okay, questions?
Could you spin around a 3D model?
Yes.
Hey, while you're calling up the model, just to save time, what percent site coverage did you have the last go around when the parking was outside? Anybody remember that number?
Yeah, Lindsay will,
Okay, I was just making sure I could unmute. Let me.
Unmute when you mute yourself.
%45.
Thank you. And we're at 59.9 or.
Oh, sorry. 45% was the entire site. So that included the condos and the townhomes. The tower house townhome site was 52%.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And one last question before we get into the model. On drawing A302, as I look at that height from the first level at 8741 and the roof at 8783, that's 42-foot height. From that first level to there, am I reading that wrong? 8741 to 8783. It's 40. Yeah, it's 42 foot tall, right? That from the first floor at the average finished grade to the roof height. Yeah. It's 42 feet on that south elevation, correct? A302 south elevation. Okay, I mean, you can go on to the model if you want, but I mean, you can just get back to us on that. Take your time. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Just to mention too, on the site coverage is that we are permitted per the PUD to have 60% site coverage. And
I want to just make a comment, Lindsay. The site coverage max, the height PUD max of 40 feet is subject to the review of HARC and the design guidelines based on mass and scale, context of the neighborhood, et cetera. It doesn't guarantee you 60%. It doesn't guarantee you 40 feet, let alone 42 feet, but I just want to correct the record.
Okay.
All right, let's go through the model.
Jim, this seems to be the design, the tweak design you just show us. Can you show us what's in the application packet?
Yes.
And then do you have one of this model in the context as well?
Yes. You want to see, so the modifications we made, let me just get this correct, to the east building, the roof setbacks. You want to see?
I don't want to see any of the modifications that you just showed. I'd like to, I'm primarily concerned about just the context, the mass.
Okay, you want to see the white model?
Yeah.
Okay.
But others might want to see the 3D model, not the one that's in the packet, not this one.
Yeah, then the one that's in the packet's the only one we can do. I wouldn't mind spinning around, before you go to the white model. This all four sides one last time before we lose you.
So this is the one that's not in the packet.
I don't want to see that.
Okay. This is the tweaks that they just showed us.
Thank you for giving us an inside view.
Yeah.
Just want to see what's in the packet before I vote.
Okay. As the 3D model or the?
It's the 3D model and then let's go to the white model or that's fine. I don't need to see the color rendering if we're just, in fact, I don't sure need to see it all. If you want to go right to the white, then let's answer Matt's concerns. Well, context of the neighborhood, I think, is what
Yeah.
we're looking at.
Which would be different than normal.
Yeah, that little lower view was helpful
Yeah,
there,
I'm
Jim,
getting it,
versus
sorry.
from the sky. Thank you. That's a good. Okay. You want to rotate it out?
And do you have the one that's not the tweaked model? This is the same one.
Yes.
It's not you have it, there's not a large mass and scale difference. I'm just, if people are watching, I'd like to see what's in the packet, this is not in the packet.
The difference is that at the top.
This little roof brow
Yeah.
and the dormer on the other side are the
Yep, got it.
primary.
Yeah, I see that on here. It's not there.
If it's easy
this
to
is the-
switch it over,
okay,
I would
got it.
appreciate it. If it's
Yeah,
not,
let
we
me-
can just look at this.
Hang on here.
Other questions? Otherwise,
Yeah, it's
Bring this up.
coming up. These are big models and. slow.
just, I mean, rather than silence, how about questions?
I would like an explanation of the internal lot line changes. Not knowing where that came from, it seems like that would invalidate the approval for the project to the north, because you're reducing the area. Site coverage would be increased, the setbacks would be decreased. So I haven't seen that happen before, and I'm curious.
Yeah, well, and I'll give to jump in with you. It seems to me that there was 3% left over from the approval of the north, and this is an attempt to take that 3% and apply it to the south. I don't know that, like you said, I don't know. I've
Better
seen
ask it as
that.
a question right now. Well, actually.
Well, so I think Matt did that. He said, could you please provide an explanation, question mark?
So are we talking the two lines between the building?
Yes.
So the internal property lines
Yes.
that were originally had just one job, now they have two. Those have moved, all of those have moved slightly. And essentially, they're giving more land to this project and taking it away from the condos that we just
Which
approved.
increased the site coverage of what we just approved, but we didn't know the line was switching.
Well,
So
Anyway, we can ask it as a question. So is that what happened?
yes, the lot lines shifted north slightly. So for example, on the westernmost lot, there was 40 additional feet that were gained from the north. We're not talking a lot of area, we're talking pretty small areas, just some slight shifting. So about 180 feet on the center and the east, approximately.
Did that answer your question?
it did, but I maybe hear from John.
400 square feet total. Some quick math.
What's your opinion on this? I'm a little surprised that this wasn't in the narrative. This seems to be tried to be swept under the rug, and I don't appreciate that, but maybe you have you give us some guidance.
Well, I'm not sure it's apparent when you look at this for any of it without further study, but
Yeah, I mean, it really just shows up when you look under the dimensional limitations in the chart. Those have changed, and if you study the previous site plan, you can tell.
Well, yeah, I see, but the concern here is that we have a prior approval of a site coverage of 57%, 2,621 square feet that has now been changed post approval.
is it over 60?
Well, I can't tell. I mean, I can't tell because there's been no application made for the prior approval to show that revision. So you can't actually tell. I mean, we've been told it's 40 and maybe it is 40 and maybe that is or isn't a big deal.
And I don't know if that would go to P and Z.
But it's something that it's not a nothing. James?
So Matt, it should have been referenced in this application. That was an error and an omission that it was not referenced in the project narrative. The PUD states that the project as a whole may propose up to 60% PUD for the entire PUD, recognizing HARC's purview as far as mass and scale and determining these things.
Is that
It
not over
may-
60% now?
It is not over 60% now.
Thank you.
The reason that the applicant is sounding like the lot lines are inconsequential is because they are. This could be a project where all of the lot lines are removed. And this is one big lot with 4 buildings on it. It would still meet land use code, PUD site coverage. It would still meet all code requirements. So as far as your HARC purview, absolutely. Mass and scale, siting upon the overall site, very important. I believe the applicant was just trying to make the math work with the individual lots, but they don't have to exist. They could go away.
Okay.
It's immaterial to.
Again, we
the
still have in
project.
front of us, we can look at setbacks still, we can look at mass and scale.
Correct.
Do so.
Absolutely.
I think we should move on, and thank you for the explanation. It was an important question.
Mhm.
What other questions do we have for the applicant? I guess I don't. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. I don't. Okay, well, thank you. We'll hear from the public, and if you're here, you'd like to come up, please read your name into the record, and we ask you to keep your comments 3 minutes or less. If you're online, you want to speak virtually, raise your hand electronically, and we look forward to your comments.
Oh, yes. Understand.
Yep. Welcome, and yes, just read your name in the record, and then, thank you.
Fellow Commission, my name is Sandy Gorley, resident of Mountain House in between these 2 projects to the west of the townhomes. Appreciate your review. We submitted some detailed written comments, and I'm assuming that you've taken a look. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to sort of highlight our concerns. So relative to the last review in March, this building's only got bigger, actually. Reference 4th page of our submission. I believe it shows that all levels, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th levels have all moved closer to the street. So it is a significantly more massive building than it was. We do recognize the parking improvement and appreciate that on behalf of the neighborhood. That will be significant help. Our concerns about the mass at the top of the building, the fourth level, remain. You know, I wasn't aware of the 40+ feet element of it. So that's not addressed in our comments. The staircases on the street seem to be really intrusive to the flow of the neighborhood. And I'm not sure why they couldn't maybe be internalized in the podium. But that feels very obstructive. We made some comments about not understanding really how the trash process would really work there. Other main concern is starting to be about rain and stormwater runoff. You know, appreciating the fact that there's not the snow issue that there used to be, because there's not, you know, it's all covered in roof, but now it's a rainfall issue. So we would certainly look or ask HARC to consider some requirement for gutters in addition to the snow rails that were previously discussed to keep the stormwater from flooding our lot next door to it, where we do have basements. So that's our comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate your considerations, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. More public comment? Electronically, I see many of you out there. If you'd like to comment, please raise your hand. And we have Natasha Summer Burley. Oh.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, I represent the Sommer family in Australia, the owner of Mountain House East, which we've owned for over the last 30 years. We have a concern about the retaining wall between Mountain House East and the townhomes, as it hasn't been addressed. And the boundary line between those two properties literally runs through the set of stairs, the middle of the set of stairs that are attached to the retaining wall. So the integrity of this wall is going to be affected, and our concern is the structural effects it's going to have on our property. As a builder myself, I have expressed my concerns about this on numerous occasions in these meetings, but it appears to be continually overlooked or ignored, which is of concern to me, because I'm fully aware of the enormity of the issues that could arise both structurally and legally if the integrity of our property is compromised. And this will happen when this will become an issue as soon as demolition commences, because their property is on the current townhome is on a retaining wall that is linked to the other retaining wall. So that's one concern I really have. And also that, you know, there was a request to reduce a level, and there's still 4 levels there. I mean, they've reduced it by a bit, but like Sandy, I wasn't aware of the 40-foot thing. But I'm just concerned about the effectiveness it's going to have to our solar, ventilation, outlook, privacy again. And finally, the townhomes have been now moved back. They were further away. Now they've moved back closer to our property with the minimum requirement. And I'm just concerned, like Sandy, about the effects of the water and any the rain, snow shedding that will come directly onto our property if it's not guided away from the roof towards some sort of stormwater on the street or something else. But that's it. Thank you for the efforts. I think the car park's an improvement from where it's gone, so it's not on there, and looking at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Okay, any more virtual people out there virtually would like to raise your hand electronically? See 3 or 4 more people going once. Oh, in the room, would you like to go up? Okay, please come on up.
I'm Patty McIntosh with Telluride Lodge, and my concerns, I guess I didn't know I could view this before this presentation tonight. But again, the parking has gone underground, which I'm not real familiar with. Did they dig down or are they just covering everything? And with the parking, there's one lot per unit, which there's more bedrooms than one per unit. So again, that's an issue. And agreed with what Sandy all had to say and Natasha as far as the height goes. And the pedestrian flow is still a concern of mine. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else out there virtually? No? Okay, does the applicant have any remarks or rebuttal to the public comments?
Sure. I would just like to provide a little bit of clarification and make sure that we're all on the same page as far as, first of all, the building height. Our building height for these buildings is 35 feet and then 35 feet and 2 inches. So nothing is 42 feet tall. We're not over the height requirement. Or sorry, the height allowance per the LUC, which is measured from the midpoint for a gabled roof. It's measured from the mean height level between the highest ridge or wall and its highest associated eave. So that's how we've measured these heights. And that's what heights we're showing on these plans. In terms of site coverage, so at the last hearing, we talked a little bit about covering the parking to help enclose it and make a better pedestrian situation. Basically, if we had taken our previous design and covered the parking, we would have been much over site coverage. Our buildings would have been a lot bigger than what we're showing here today. For example, the west would have been a 62% site coverage. The center would have been a 79% site coverage, and the east would have been 65%. And that's using the updated lot lines that are in your packet. And I just wanted to point out that the buildings themselves, just without the parking for either of them, have increased in size very slightly, about 180 square feet per unit for those 3 buildings. So I think those are the main topics I just wanted to hit on there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, begin deliberations. Let me please share some big picture observations here. Nowhere in this section was guidelines. And of course, 23B3 says provide 1- and 2-story elements at all the property edges. I commend the applicant for west elevation change, but the rest of this seems like it needs a lot of work to gain compliance, and I just can't see this board supporting a 4-story as Matt added that condition. And I think we should do a straw poll and get this over with, because this is the most important, biggest mass and scale issue. Other than now, the site coverage is significantly more because they put the parking underneath it. The building, and we shouldn't have to rely on the public to tell us, is just bigger than it was in March. I mean, it's just larger. Mass and scale has increased, and the height, they didn't follow the recommendation of number 10 the last minute. You reduced the height a full story. So anybody have any general comments on that before we get into any minutia? I mean, I think we should settle where the board stands on that. Do we have a consensus?
I agree with what you said.
Okay. Yeah. So we would probably want to restore Matt's number 10. And then I'll let somebody else add on here. And number 2, do we agree? I agree with Jonna, but do we agree it's just the east face left to do the further step back, or are there other elevations that you have concern on? Since the guidelines don't say have 1- and 2-story elements on one property edge or 2, it says at property edges. So, I mean, we have it step back partial 1-story at one place. But I'm interested what everybody else thinks about the step backs. Which Johnny has number 2 here to the east only. I'm asking, is there other concern?
Well, so first and foremost, with regards to number 1, condition one was to provide more variety in setback height, color, texture, materials.
Our
buildings.
old one, you mean?
Our old one.
Yes.
And as Jonah says here in staff analysis, they've done that. They've done that to a pretty significant extent. Now we can get into what methods they've used to do that. I think having the lower roof over a portion of the parking is one method they use to create some of that. I think the two stairs at the corner, the stair elements, they provide visual interest. I'm not 100% sure it's the visual interest we're after. There's certainly a lot more texture here. There's been a lot more thought given to the detailing and the articulation of the elevation. It's pretty clear that the east elevation needed more work. Clear enough that they did some more of that work on their own. But I think number one is close to being satisfied, our previous number one. And I think that's why it didn't reappear in this motion this
Certainly
time.
they created, to your point, a lot of variety, but do you think those step backs?
Well, so I just wanted to speak to one. So that's
On number
one.
one.
So number two, step down the building along the east and south. Now along the south, it's not so much that they stepped the building, they stepped it down by stepping it out. They covered the parking and it steps out and thus down.
That's a one-story roof there.
Yeah, so there is a one-story element.
Right.
On the south elevation.
Yep.
We can talk about how that probably needs to be more carried around onto the east more. But I feel like number two can get there as well, right? To me, it's close. They have stepped down the building along the south, and they just need to work on the east a little more.
You're fine with the other elevations? Stepping down?
Well, the other elevations are internal to the lot. The west elevation, it is, it's not a lot line to a public way.
What about 10 then, when you put that into that whole?
Well, right. So then it starts to compound, reduce the height of the buildings a full story. I'll just come around and say it. I wasn't on board with that condition the first time around, so I'm not on board with it this time. I think, look, density in the accommodation districts and indeed throughout town it's the new world we're in. And I'm okay with these buildings being 35-foot buildings. So reducing a full story, you're asking them to take 10 or 12 feet out of the building and have a 20-foot building. I'm not on board with that.
It was based on a true 4-story physical building, not parking underneath it. I mean, there's a difference there in the way they put it together. And it has come down a bit. And it doesn't read, when I look back at the old drawings, it doesn't read as this huge. It's a big building, yes, but it doesn't read as huge as it did before.
Except for physically, it is bigger.
Yeah, but it doesn't, but with the step backs they've done, turning the cables, those elements, I think it's broken it up more.
So I do appreciate the level of articulation and texture and detailing that has come in this package. I think it is vastly helping the architecture. I disagree with Stacy. I think that this is too tall. This is a 4-story building. The games that they are playing in the roof, it's not, and with these roof eaves and measurements, I don't really agree with them. I think it still is a 4-story building. And I think that's a fundamental issue with the mass scale. I have to say, we've seen 3 completely different buildings here. I would just keep the same conditions from the last review that we had and continue it.
Which ones?
All of them.
Well, they
If that's-
satisfied, they
if it-
satisfied some of them.
Well, if it gets revised completely again, I don't want to start over.
Oh,
again. 'Cause we only have two more,
one.
or one more. I'm sure the town council will give them another.
But could
It's
we
as a-
eliminate some of the ones like the asphalt shingles and the,
Yeah, we could.
and,
1, 2, 8, and 10 need to say 1, 2, 8, and 10. I think is what I hear you saying, which I agree with. But
Well, I think, 12 as well. I mean, what is the primary?
primary entrance?
Yeah, I mean, is the primary entrance defined by the stair?
I think that there could be another substantial change.
Yeah.
If we're asking them to take off the 4-story. And I think it's less brain damage to just, these were good conditions before, we can keep them. If they've met them, they don't need to address them. And I'm also happy if we want to nitpick and go through them all.
I'm okay with 1, 2, 8, 10, and 12 staying. And Stacy's not necessarily in.
1 to 8 label paving material.
Oh. 1, 2, 10, and 12, but the big thing is number 10. I'm totally supportive of Matt. The guidelines, when you mentioned the 4-story, and again, I cited what they say about 1 and 2-story building looks, which they have on one side, the south side. I would agree with Stacy.
Well,
Facing the condos, maybe it's not as stringent.
only because this is discussion and at the risk of sounding argumentative, which I guess I am being argumentative. What if this was a 3-story building that was 30 feet, 35 feet tall? It's compliant with the land use code.
Yeah, but we got context of neighborhood. We have the mass and scale is for us to adjudicate. That's
Okay.
These are taller than condos.
Yeah.
And the grade drops in it.
so. Just move this along. What do you guys?
I
think
would
about
say
1, 2, 10, and 12.
1, 2. 10, 12. Already done the other ones. And then keep in snow guards. And step back the upper level. Keep. Keep the new, Donna's new conditions and add them to the ones from the March 20th.
And specifically, just to summarize, 1, 2, 10, and 12.
1, 2, and 12, yes.
Andrew?
Now, I'm curious about 12, like, do you think the stair satisfies that?
Well, actually, no, I don't think it does.
Okay.
I think that when I first saw that drawing, I go, you gotta walk through between the two buildings and your door is in a.
When you gotta walk out of the garage to go up to your unit, and these are free market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As a
And
person in real estate.
And there's no articulation of the entrance.
I'd say number 12 is probably one of my least, concerning ones.
Yeah.
But I would still keep it in there, condition.
So Andrew, you're 1, 2, 10, and 12. You're with Bob and
Yeah,
Matt and I.
yeah.
Okay. Is there any, I mean, we'll see it again, obviously. Do we want to get into the weeds in anything else, or is that, I mean, this is mass and scale still. And I think this is enough.
With including 1 and 2 of the current.
Right, except for on 2, shouldn't we need, oh no, well, on the old,
That clarifies it a
2,
little bit.
the old 2 is now John as new 2 revised. So are we okay with not having the old 2, which was stepping down east and south, because they stepped down the south?
Okay.
So it'd just be 1,
Fine with that.
No,
1, 10, and 12,
don't you want to keep the old 2?
and the new 2.
I think if we're losing the 4th story, I think it's gonna be okay. I don't think they need to further step back the south. I appreciate how they're covering the front of the parking and the stairs.
already
I
done
think
it.
help step it down to
Yeah.
the street.
I got.
Okay,
So 1,
as is 1 and 2, and then our old 1, 10, and 12.
yes.
I'd like to ask one more question before we have a motion. Matt said we've seen 3 different buildings. And by the way, on the other projects, including the next one, not to presuppose anything, there's been really good progress made. I think we all agree. But on this one, we're stuck. And meanwhile, we have shut out the rest of the community and their projects since January, pretty much, just focusing on these. My idea for continuance, since it's and we've said this before, and we've had agreement, if we don't get it right after 2 continuances on mass and scale, then maybe some people that are compliant should move ahead in the line. So my question is, would you want to consider moving it to August, since we've seen 3 different designs and we're still not there compared to the progress that they've made on the other buildings anyway? And I'll get to in just a second, Lance. I mean, we're not supposed to have that, but we'll see what your comment is. Would anybody want to consider that and give other people a chance to get in line?
I'd say if there's a backlog of private project, yes, but I'd let Erica and John.
Well, there is. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, we'll break off deliberations, we don't normally do, but Lance, you had something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to state something for the record. Mendota next door is a 4-story building at a 35-foot height. Most buildings that are approved by this board at a 35-foot base height have 4 stories. So this notion, that's all I'll say for the record, because it's not a deliberate comment. We would request that you guys continue this if you're going to continue it to the next meeting. These seem to be pretty easy issues to solve.
Well, we've tried, I don't even want to debate it. We have tried 3 times and we're no closer to approval than we were the first time.
With all due respect, asking a housing project to reduce 1 full floor to go 12 feet below the measured height allowed of the street is unique and inconsistent with past board actions.
Okay. And our obligation is to be blind to the application, or blind to the applicant, and consider each as massive scale in the design guidelines as whatever function it is. And there's no such thing as we make different rules for different types of buildings. We've been trained in this legally and professionally. You disagree, I guess.
That's not the point.
Okay. Well, past mistakes are also not an excuse for repeating.
Let's not get in it.
Okay, so my question was, would we want to consider going to August, since we've had 3 different reviews? And unlike the others that they've made progress on, and there is a list of private sector that's been shut out of this town, this community, I don't feel good about it. And I think we should move it to August. That's just my opinion. So I'm just going to take a straw poll. We'll start at this end, and I'll go with the majority.
I can understand what you're saying, and I would have no problem moving it to August.
Andrew?
Just almost go either way.
Well, let's see if there's any. Matt?
I would move to August.
I think they have made substantial progress. And I think it'd be consistent to continue to July.
Well, we've had conversations that we have in the past on multiple continuances. If we're not close on mass and scale, we have said to ourselves.
Well, that's why we differ. I think they are close on maths and scale. I think they're land use code compliant. I think they're not even asking for the 5 feet that they got approved in the PUD.
Well, right now we have 1, 2, 3 that suggest that it might be August. Yeah, I said I would go with the majority. Go ahead, Johnny, you had a comment?
Clearly I will not be here, but staff has expressed the desire for it to go in July for workflow purposes. There's a chance that Erica could be here in person in July, and it would be best if she could be here for that item. So July would be staff's preference.
Let's go with staff's preference.
Okay, we'll respect that. And who would like to make the motion?
I'd like to make a comment. I think part of the issue for me on this project and all the others is the lack of documentation of the 3-dimensional aspect of this. land use code requires that there are models for these larger projects. There's supposed to be a model of the project and its context. We've waived that in the past using digital models. We're used to seeing those in the packets. And that helps us wrap our heads around it. We are not presented these three-dimensional views with context in the package. If we are, they're not very well documented. They're unclear. And that to me has led to the uncertainty of what the mass and scale, if it fits in the neighborhood or not. So I would implore the applicant to put those images in the package. And if you're gonna come back and fight for us for 3.5 stories, show us how it fits in to the neighborhood. And that may convince us that it works, but part of the struggle is the lack of documentation on all these projects has been significant.
Okay, well, the town asked before for this, so I hope that they, like most applicants, will comply. I have one other request, especially in the context of the neighborhood. Look, we have been very conservative with respect to requiring story poles. But on this one, I feel it's the last one here. We got to get it right. And at least 4 of the 5 of us feel mass scale is not over with here and not resolved. I would like to put in the motion that on this one, and the last time on Northwest, we just asked for some flagging and that was fine. But I think we need the story poles here to tell us what we're looking at. So do we have consensus that we can request them to do that, as we have to most people with these types of projects?
Thanks so much. Yeah.
I mean, it's 3 different tries. So I'd like to make it a condition that we have straw poll. Okay, with it?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yes, Stacy? Would it help?
Will the new story poles be significantly different than the previous ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
If it was just tweaking, I wouldn't bother. Well, right now we have,
Okay. The building's closer to the street now with the parking.
only the
okay, so
okay.
my notes say that we have 1 and 2 as Jonna has written. We add the old number 1, 10 and 12, and then we add a request for story poles. Yeah. Consensus on that. If somebody wants to make a motion, or I can make a motion, I don't care.
These are small scale applications. Story poles is the requirement of large scale. The applicant will not consent to putting up story poles for budgetary and time concerns.
So they refused it. I know it's not, it's a requirement on large scale, but that doesn't mean the antithesis that you can't put them on small scale, because we've had them before, but the town is on record with refusing to put story poles.
Not on record for anything. I refer to the town attorney.
Okay,
Well, I don't take a position with respect to the applicant, just that it can't be required by this board that the story poles go up. It can be requested. The applicant could accept that or could
and they
refuse.
just said no.
Well, you can request that.
Okay, well, it's gonna be part of the motion, and we would appreciate it if you would help us, help you make a decision. We moved it up to July. So,
Mark, can I
Yeah.
say that what we've heard from the feedback from the town, I think let's back off on the story poles. Or put in the motion, consider.
for me to make an objective decision, I feel I would like to see the story poles walking through this neighborhood. And, there's no reason to, I mean, what's the town got to do? It's just it's an applicant, which we're supposed to be blind to and treat everybody the same. So we're just gonna request, as Lance suggested, and we'll just see if they say yes or no. They may say no, Matt. And we'll move forward.
Okay.
Unless
Why don't
you got any,
you got the list there. Why don't you read it?
well, it's a short list, but okay. All right, I move to continue to the July 17th HARC meeting, the application for a small scale new construction for the Tower House Townhomes, May 15, 2024, the following conditions, 1 and 2 as written by staff. Add the previous meetings, number 1, 10 and 12 back.
Would you please state for the record the date of that meeting?
Oh,
for the
March
reference?
20th.
March 20th.
So add, number 3 would be, 1 and 2 is written. add back the March 20th conditions number 1, 10, and 12 as they were written. And the last condition would be, the board would request the erection of story poles to help with the mass and scale decision. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided at a public hearing held on May 15th, 24, with no such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval should be submitted within 60 days, and the rest of this as written. So, well, we'll hope that in a positive sense, make the same progress you've made on the other projects, and we can move on.
Matt will second.
Okay, then let's vote.
Well, then with explanation, I vote no, because I feel like the height is largely compliant. I feel like the
That's okay.
condition 1 has been met largely.
Okay,
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck. We'll see you in July. Don't go anywhere, because we're one more. Canyonlands Northwest, consideration of final large-scale application for new construction outside of the THLD that will contain more than 5,000 square foot of floor area per land use code 7203B21. Lot 3, Block 1, Canyonlands subdivision to the town of Telluride is the legal description. The address is to be determined on West Colorado Zone District Accommodations 2, owner town of Telluride, applicant Norris Design, and staff member Jonna Wenzel.
Okay, thank you. This is the final large-scale review, and the final step in a two-step process. The preliminary application was approved by HARC at the meeting on April 17th. This site is located on the south side of Colorado Avenue, adjacent to Clark's Market. It's outside the historic district and in the accommodations 2 zone district and accommodations treatment area. The site is vacant and currently used for parking, storage, and staging. The proposal is to build a new multifamily affordable housing structure. It's situated at the northwest corner of the lot with parking below and with vehicular access from Colorado Avenue. HARC approved the preliminary application with 5 conditions at the April meeting. Condition number 1 was to provide a note on the elevations indicating doors are no more than 2/3 light and provide a cut sheet. A note has been provided on the elevations that all exterior doors are to be a minimum of, maximum of 2/3 light. I haven't seen a cut sheet. Those could be provided at the CA plan submittal. Condition number 2 is to reduce the height of the north gable and or set back the 3rd floor gable. The entire building has been shifted south an additional 10 feet to provide a front setback that varies between 20 feet and almost 27 feet. Previously, the northwest corner was 16 feet 10 inches setback, and the northeast corner was 12 feet 6 inches, and those have been increased to 26 feet 10 inches and 20 feet respectively. Condition number 3 likewise was to further set back from Colorado the north facade of the building and to mark the corners of the building with stakes. The entire building has been shifted south an additional 10 feet. As I mentioned, the stakes were put up and we went out and looked at them earlier this afternoon. Condition number 4 was to remove the 2 north side posts and redesign with pushing them up against the front facade of the deck. The posts have been removed and replaced by diagonal braces. Condition number 5 was to reduce the size of the northwest 2nd floor windows, specifically the horizontal window above the square window. That has been removed. So staff recommends approval of this application and has suggested 1 condition, which is to provide an exterior lighting plan with fixture cut sheets for the final CA review. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions or let Jim and Noel share their presentation.
Questions for Jonna?
No questions from me.
Thank you, Jonna.
Thank you.
Okay, please share your screen. Well,
All right. Thank you very much, Jonna, for the wonderful staff reports tonight. We're here tonight, of course, for our final large-scale application for Canyonlands Northwest. We did have some conditions from our previous meeting that included discussion on mass and scale. And in response to conditions number 2 and number 3, we've really used a holistic design approach and moved the entire building south 10 feet and then lowered the height of the building 3 inches overall. So looking at the site plan, and I know that you all went out on a site visit today, which is great. If you can go to the next slide. There we go. So by pushing the building back a significant amount, we're now back behind the existing property line. This zone district does allow for a 0-foot lot line setback. And on the west side of the site, we are actually set back 26 feet from the existing property line. So this increased setback has provided us with a really great opportunity to provide a usable, positive open space along Colorado Avenue. So we have some native grass lawn areas, we have layered plantings. Of course, we have our walkways to our building. On the south side, the big change is that all of our parking has been moved into the garage. So I know we've talked about this a lot. At this point, all on-site parking is now 100% covered on Canyonlands. At the south of the site, we do have additional open space, and we've shifted the design a little bit so that we're able to preserve 2 of the mature trees along the southern property line. We also have once again reduced the need for snow storage while increasing the area for available snow storage. If you go to the next slide, we can take a look. This was requested at the last meeting to just look at a zoom in of the front, showing the existing property line in the thinner red dash, the proposed property line in the thick red line. We also have the existing sidewalk shown in tan, which is being relocated to the north so that it connects better into the streetscape that will be designed with this project along Colorado Avenue and create a better pedestrian experience there and better connectivity. And with that, we do have a context map as well, just to show there's some discussion about comparable setbacks. So we just wanted to kind of give some background on why we think this is compliant at this distance. Let me just. Basically, all the setbacks shown are from the street closest to the facade of the building. So for Clark's Market, we have a very similar distance setback from our site. It's the first floor is the part that protrudes the most, but it will generally obscure the Canyonlands Northwest building from view as the entrance into town. For Hotel Telluride, we talked a little bit about that. On the furthest western portion of the hotel, it is 65 feet, a little more from Colorado Avenue. And then we do have some measurements from Cornet Lane that range from about 5 feet to 27 feet. Then we look at the Gold Belt building. We have about 32 feet to the right of way of Colorado Avenue. And again, our closest portion of the building is the eastern side, which is 44 feet. So very similar in context. I also just wanted to add Mendota is on the western side. The western side that you can see there is about 34 feet from the edge of pavement existing, and a little further in there, it's about 26.5 feet. So we feel that this streetscape is becoming more and more consistent. We're able to provide a lot more green space than some of these other buildings have provided, which will provide for a really great resident experience. And we feel really confident that we're meeting that condition. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jim to talk about how we have updated our building.
Thank you, Lindsay. I am starting with this overview slide. Not much has changed with the cladding. I believe on one facade you might see some reduction of the corrugated metal, but largely this facade has been untouched, rather aside from being pushed back and addressing the concerns of the poles holding up the decks. You can see here the poles are pilasters, as we call them, with kickers helping support the decks. The window above here that was mentioned in the conditions has been fully removed. And that was in this second story bit on the northwest. This is a view of the streetscape. You can see it in relationship to the Clark's Market, and we have included a site model. Oops, sorry. View of that, and I am ready to open the model when you'd like to, in context, fully. And it's the colored version, not the white box.
Sure.
And we can do that walkthrough at any moment. So really no additional changes on the facade beyond the columns going back to the wall as kickers. And we did a little modification here, showing dropping the corrugated down one story and inserting the composite horizontal siding. And this building has been completely eradicated of the reclaimed siding that is more and has been more prevalent on the condo buildings as it relates to differentiating the pallets. Here are 4 views of the four sides of the building with some obliques here looking down the access drive. The view to the northwest, the west facade here in the upper left corner. Zooming in on this kind of accentuates the stepping back, the effects of the stepping back, the generous lawn area, yard, the walkways to the west. And it shows quite well the kickers and the pilasters opposed to columns.
Did you go back to that sheet, but the one up above it, and zoom in the middle there where the 3-story piece is, the 3rd-story piece? So the plane of the white section and the adjacent wall that's in the wood is the same plane?
No, this has a setback.
There's a setback there.
Yeah, let me.
And then there's a setback of the 3rd floor from there that has a bit of a roof and
Yes.
the balcony.
This
Okay.
this shows it quite clearly if I zoom in here.
And that is what you had
That's a setback.
previously in the design. That did not change.
Right. I think the dialogue was setting this back significantly, and we set the building back significantly. And I'm gonna confirm with Noel, we did take 3 to 4 inches out of the roof height. So we were at 7.6 for the plate of this highest roof. And we took that down by
6 inches, I think, it dropped.
6 inches.
Yeah.
6 inches. Thank you. I am gonna go straight here to model we have. And this is the view, Mark, that they're like driving down the road.
Driving down Main Street again.
Driving
This is our
down
last
Main
drive, I
Street.
think.
Big model. I can step
I hope. Okay. Could you back up just to the very beginning where you see the Clark's building, Jason, to this? Okay, thank you. The block. Okay. All right, you can keep driving.
look at the east view in relationship to the adjacent buildings. I'm gonna switch around here. Back into this courtyard. This is the back of the building here as it relates to the internal drive. Roofscape from the west. Back down to street view. The oblique streetscape for you. We'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, questions for the applicant. Let me just say something, we need to call as we see it. This is a good example of how the applicant has listened and made great strides towards compliance with the guidelines, not what we think, but with the guidelines that we took the oath, so to speak, to uphold. And I want to just thank you for that. I'll start off with just 2 final questions that I have. One is, this looks so much better for all the reasons, it's mass scale, open space, et cetera. It was a setback. So thanks for not moving that little gable back 10 feet. But my question is, it's 7 feet closer to the road, and this is just a question, on the east end as you drive down. Is there anything preventing you from just changing that angle ever so slightly? So, I mean, it's 7 foot, but let's say that it was 2 or 3 foot further back, if you adjusted the angle of the building to be away from Colorado as you go east a little further. See what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
27.
it was evident that,
I mean,
there was,
is there something
when we were
preventing
out there
you
on
from
site.
just 5 degrees tilt and then all of a sudden it's 24 degrees off or feet off the street versus 20 and 27 at the other? It's just a question. Is there something preventing that?
I could answer that too. I think the problem would be if you twist that, you're pushing the back end of the building
Yeah,
into Clark's. Yeah.
and then from a site standpoint, I would encourage Lindsay to jump in.
Well, that's enough of an answer.
Okay.
Bob already answered.
Yeah, we're currently parallel to the property line, so it allows us to have that parallel drive lane.
Still focus in the front. And my last question is, thank you for lowering that gable 6 inches. Is there anything that prevents you from coming down maybe a foot or more with respect to the height of that gable, which still is dominant feature as you see on this very elevation? Is there something else that prevents you from coming more down than six inches?
What's the plate height now?
Yeah, it's the plate height is at 7 feet and 80 inches is code. That's a studio unit. So when you bring the plate down code wise,
The walls.
you have to bring the
Yeah,
walls in.
walls come in. That's cozy.
Yep.
Or not. Okay, I don't have any other questions, but let's hear from the board.
I don't have any questions.
Any questions?
I make a motion.
Public comment.
We got it.
Oh, right, public comment.
Sorry, Stacy, I know you're right. Let's hear from the public. Anybody want to give public input on this project? Nobody in the room, but how about out there in Telluride world? I don't see anybody. Please raise your hand electronically if you'd like comment. No. Stacy, do the honors.
I move to approve the application of the final large-scale new construction for the Canyonlands Northwest Building at Lot 3, Block 1, Canyonlands subdivision of the town of Telluride based on the staff memo dated May 15, 2024. With the following conditions, one is provided in the staff memo. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided at a public hearing held on May 15, 2024 with such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void unless otherwise indicated. The revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required.
Matt will second.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
It's unanimous.
Yay.
And I would say, this is kind of a historic moment since this is our last word and we're going to adjourn here that there's always been recognition, but I think it's fitting that on a major project that's impactful to this town and on her last project that there was unanimous approval. So thank you again, Jonna.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
This-
guys, for pushing it back.
Yep, this meeting is adjourned at 8:43 versus 11. All right.